Chapter 619. When Sun Lang and Xia Wei were whispering to each other, Bai Yue was leading the way. Even though he had lost all of his memories, the Bai clan fort was still his home. Every blade of grass, every tree, every brick, and every tile was engraved in his mind. He was one with the glorious and glorious Bai clan fort. Now that he was back at home, even though he had lost all of his memories, everything was still so familiar to him. Before he was born, the Bai clan fort was a military clan in the Qin prefecture, but it was far from what it was today. It was only in his generation that the Bai clan's accumulation of resources exploded. After he was bestowed the gold luminous sacred sword and became an auxiliary general, the Bai clan fort's momentum skyrocketed. After the Great War of the Tian Yuan clan, the Bai clan fort's momentum soared unstoppably. With the momentum of the Great War of the Tian Yuan clan, the Bai clan fort's influence soared. He was a participant in all of this. The glory of the clan, the inheritance, and the creed were all inseparable from him. But now, the founder who was respectfully addressed as the ancestor had lost his memories. His intelligence and rationality had been annihilated in endless pain and despair, leaving only a muddle-headed shell. He strode forward, following the vague memory, to the depths of the Bai clan castle. As he ran, he shouted, "Over here! Over here! My sword! My sword!" Sun Lang followed him unhurriedly. Xia Wei was right behind him. Bai Jinming was even more anxious. He was sure that the sword his father was talking about was the gold brilliant sacred sword. How could he let the treasure of the clan, the national treasure of the Hutu clan, fall into the hands of a scoundrel? Losing a divine weapon was a serious crime. Thus, he used his movement technique and quickly caught up with his father. He first glared fiercely at Sun Lang, then shouted, "Father, don't panic. I'll help you find it." Bai Yue ignored him and continued to stride forward. Fortunately, the steward was Bai Junming's brother, who was as close to him as a brother. He was meticulous and loyal, and he had already made proper arrangements along the way. He strictly forbade the miscellaneous people in the mansion from leaving the mansion so that the possibility of Bai Yue being discovered was minimized. Otherwise, if someone discovered that the ancestor was running around and making a fuss, it would probably cause some trouble for no reason. The Bai family fort was so large that it looked like a small city. The center of the fort was naturally where the most important secrets of the Bai family were kept. This place was heavily guarded and was a forbidden area that was strictly forbidden by the Bai family. Anyone who trespassed would be killed without question, regardless of their status. In the eyes of the unqualified members of the clan, this was the residence of the mysterious great ancestor of the Bai clan. The hero of the heavens' origin realm lived in seclusion. Some people said that the great ancestor had seen through the world and understood the great Tao. Some people said that the great ancestor was writing books and deducing divine skills. He was waiting for the imperial court to summon him again. There were also some daring people who secretly said that the old ancestor was recuperating inside. Although the old ancestor had survived the battle at the Great Desolate Mountain, he had suffered extremely serious injuries. No matter what, the core area of the Bai clan fort was a forbidden area that no one was allowed to set foot in. Anyone who dared to peek or trespass, even if they were the son of the Bai clan leader, would be killed without question. This was the order that the guards had received. However, today, they had encountered the most flamboyant intruder. Even from afar, they could hear a loud commotion. When those people approached, the guardians were shocked when they saw them, because the person in the lead had long hair and raised eyebrows. Although his appearance had become bold and unrestrained, full of wild momentum, looking at his appearance, there was no doubt that he was the old master. What happened to him? Behind the great ancestor were two young people, a young man and a young woman. Behind them was the current great ancestor, Duke Jinming. The leader of the Guardians was about to greet the great ancestor when he saw the great ancestor step into the main gate. He ignored them and went straight through. The two young men also followed in as if nothing had happened. Oh, the man's expression was the most relaxed. He looked around disdainfully, as if he had entered his own backyard. The beautiful young lady, on the other hand, was somewhat guilty. She looked around with worry. Then, the great ancestor, Bai Junming, rushed over. The leader of the Guardians said in a low voice, "Great ancestor, this," Bai Junming's eyes were gloomy. He threw out a golden token. The Guardians exclaimed in surprise. "Golden dagger token." Family head Bai said coldly, "Secretly summon all the Guardians on standby. Be on full alert. Go up the wall and summon the sound shooters. Bring this token to the armory and bring out the city-breaking crossbow and the big yellow bow." Was it those two people? The figures of the two young men from before appeared in the minds of the Guardians. Immediately, their hearts trembled. They responded in a low voice and scattered in all directions. They began to prepare for battle with great efficiency. "You want to steal the golden holy sword? Even if you have the ability to trick the sword from our father's hands, you must be alive to leave the Bai clan castle. The golden holy sword is the most precious treasure of the empire. It is not something a petty thief like you can take away. You will pay the price for your greed with your blood." Bai Junming's killing intent was boiling. After giving the order, he immediately followed behind. On the other side, Bai Yue passed through the core of the defensive wall and walked inside. The core area of the Bai clan castle was not as heavily guarded as one would expect. There were no warehouses filled with treasures, nor were there any pavilions filled with books. Instead, it was a natural scenery filled with flowers and plants. There were only 2 or 3 houses in the middle. Bai Yue strode in and looked at everything around him. His eyes were filled with confusion and excitement. He seemed to have thought of something, but also didn't want to think of anything. So he was conflicted, confused, and hesitant. Suddenly, a figure flashed by. Looking at the speed and movement, one could tell that the person was extraordinary. An old man in a black robe suddenly appeared and knelt down excitedly. "General," without saying a word, Bai Yue casually punched the old man who suddenly appeared and sent him flying. He looked like he had just chased away a fly. Then, he continued to observe the familiar scene. Countless memories surged in his mind, causing him to frown and subconsciously move forward. Sun Lang and Xia Wei followed in and looked around curiously. The little minx was obviously an environmentalist demon, advocating nature and tranquility. She grew up in the 100,000 Mountains, which was a paradise isolated from the rest of the world. It was very similar to this place. So when Xia Wei saw the chirping birds and the fragrance of flowers, his eyes flashed with a trace of intoxication. "What a beautiful place!" Sun Lang looked around, and a trace of ridicule flashed in his eyes. He indifferently said, "Wow, what a disgusting place. Old man, I can actually live here. Isn't he afraid of vomiting?" Xia Wei was dissatisfied. "Why do you always act against others? The scenery here is so good. How is it disgusting?" Sun Lang shook his head and smiled. "You are wrong. There are so many people in this world. Everyone has different experiences and lives, so their personalities and preferences are very different. Some people have experienced prosperity and seen through wealth, so they live in seclusion in the countryside. They understand that plain life is a blessing, so they live in the fields and work every day. Some people, on the other hand, have been training hard for 10 years, hoping to make a great leap and become famous all over the world. Therefore, for these people, the countryside is a vulgar cesspool, while the noisy imperial capital is a paradise where they can realize their dreams. Different views and different upbringings lead to different choices. Young people like to run to big cities, while old people like to move to the countryside. Sun Lang looked at Bai Yue's blank back, and the sarcastic smile on his face became stronger. So, the dignified gold-radiant sword saint, the respected old man Bai, after making a great contribution in the Great Barren Mountains and returning home with endless glory and prestige, is living in such a damned place. It's really ironic. Xia Wei was confused. "I don't understand." Sun Lang's tone was very calm. "What I mean is if I succeed and make a name for myself, after I return to my hometown in glory, I will most likely marry 16 concubines. When I go out, I will have a sedan chair carried by 32 people. Every day, I will eat, drink, gamble, and spend money every night. As for becoming a general, paying respect to the prime minister, carrying a sword into the palace, and entering the imperial court without paying respect, it is even less of a problem. This is human nature. Xiaowei felt that this statement was very vulgar. What kind of joke was this? Didn't the history books and stories talk about many people who didn't care about fame and fortune and cared about the world? When the common people were in trouble, they would come out of the mountains and turn the world around. After success, they would leave without any attachment to power. How could it be as vulgar as you said? But she still snorted. What two situations? Sun Lang smiled softly and said, either they are afraid that the emperor will burn the bridge after crossing the river, or they are guilty that they did something they shouldn't have done before. My grandson, which situation do you think your father is in? Bai Jinming quietly appeared, his eyes seething with killing intent. It seemed that if it weren't for his father's attitude, he would have smashed Sun Lang's head with his palm. But even so, he still gnashed his teeth and said, a bunch of nonsense, full of crazy words. Who do you think you are to be mentioned in the same breath as my father? Sun Lang laughed. Who said we're on the same level? He's my son. Didn't you hear? Bai Jinming's heart was burning with anger. He wanted to attack directly, but who knew that the little bastard would take a step back and shout, my son, this unfilial grandson, wants to hit his grandfather again. Bai Jinming was shocked at first, but then he found that his father didn't react after hearing this. The old man paced back and forth in this quiet and secluded place, searching. No one knew what he was looking for. Bai Jinming was overjoyed. His eyes flashed with murderous intent as he sneered. You shout again, see if my father will answer you. Sun Lang took 2 steps back, his eyes flashing as he said, grandson, what do you want to do? Are your wings strong enough that you even dare to hit your grandfather? I'm warning you, your grandfather is strong and healthy. It's not a problem for me to go up 5 floors in one breath. If you dare to hit your grandfather, I will kill you with a single punch. Bai Jinming couldn't bear it anymore. He raised his right hand and instantly used all of his strength to punch Sun Lang's chest. Die. Chapter 620. Die. Bai Jinming's fist was filled with anger, and it was aimed directly at Sun Lang's chest. Bai Jinming used all of his strength in this punch. He swore that he would shatter the little bastard's chest and heart. Bai Jinming felt that his strength and anger had merged into one. His fist was now 120% of his strength. He glared at the target in front of him. His opponent's expression was calm. He didn't retreat, didn't dodge, and didn't even try to block. Has he been scared out of his wits? Just as the tragedy was about to happen, Bai Jinming suddenly saw a figure flash in front of him. The little girl was standing in front of the thief. The long sword on her back was already in her hand. She didn't even unsheath it. Instead, she used both of her hands to block the attack. With a loud bang, Bai Jinming wasn't able to stop in time, and his fist landed on the sword. Immediately after, he felt a strong rebound force. In his surprise, he took advantage of the momentum to absorb the force, while the little girl retreated 2 steps. Then he heard the little girl cry out, "Don't hurt him." The fact that the little girl was able to block his punch was enough to show that her martial arts weren't weak. At least in the younger generation of the Bai family, there were only a few people who could do this. Bai Jinming's heart was filled with pity for the little girl. Then he saw the thief standing behind the little girl and laughing. Bai Jinming's anger was ignited again. He sneered, "What a pair of lovers. You're trying to protect each other, and you still say that you're not together?" Xia Wei was startled. She realized that Mr. Bai had misunderstood. She shouted, "No, I'm—" Before she could finish her sentence, Bai Yu Wei, who had just logged off, suddenly shouted, "Where's the sword? Where's the sword? Why can't I find it? Why can't I find it?" There was a hint of madness in his voice. The 3 of them were shocked. Bai Jinming didn't care about killing the little bastard anymore. He immediately chased after the thief and shouted, "Father! Father!" Sun Lang and Xia Wei looked at each other and followed. Sun Lang didn't forget to tease, "Wow, thank you so much. You actually blocked this punch for me. Did you fall in love with me?" Xia Weibo said angrily, "No way. I'm helping Mr. White. If I didn't stop him, I'm afraid he would have been beaten to death by you." Sun Lang smiled and said, "Why would I kill him? He's so useful." The little demoness said warily, "What do you want to do now?" Sun Lang did not reply. The two of them followed by Yue through a few flower paths and small paths. Along the way, they tailed the rather deranged by Yue and arrived at a ruin. This place seemed to have been violently demolished. The pillars were broken, and the broken walls were mottled. Judging from the scale of the ruins and the broken bricks and tiles, this place must have been a very magnificent building in the past. Moreover, with the wealth and manpower of the Bai clan fort, it was strange that they would place this ruin in the heart of the Bai clan fort, in the residence of their ancestor. Bai Yue, who had been running all the way, rushed into the ruins and started rummaging around. He spoke in a deranged tone as he tossed and turned his sword over and over. He was so strong that he could even kick away the huge beam that was pressing down on the ruins. Soon, the ruins were in a mess. Xia Wei said in surprise, "Is this a temple?" Sun Lang said indifferently, "How could there be a temple in the Bai clan fort? It should be a Buddhist hall." Amidst the ruins and inside the collapsed buildings, there were broken pieces of statues of various sizes. There were the heads of Buddhas, the lotus seats of bodhisattvas, and the hands and feet of arhats. There were many different kinds of statues, but there were quite a lot of them. Judging from the scale of these statues, it was not inferior to the golden bodies of Buddhas in the great temples. Moreover, they were far more exquisite than the golden bodies of Buddhas. After all, the Bai clan fort was so wealthy that it was natural for their ancestor to build a Buddhist hall. The little fairy had never seen such a large Buddhist hall. Even though it was dilapidated, the sense of holiness brought by those lifelike Buddha statues made this good child among the monsters become cautious. She obediently put her palms together and bowed, as if she was asking the Buddhas to forgive her rash intrusion. Then she whispered, "Old master Bai has been worshipping Buddha inside all this time?" Sun Lang looked around at the broken temple and the broken Buddha statues. He seemed to have realized what had happened. The sneer on his face deepened. He said indifferently, "Poor thing. Sitting in front of the temple in the middle of the night, you don't care about the mortals, but the gods." The little fairy was shocked. She glared at him and said, "It's okay if you're arrogant normally, but you should keep quiet here. The Buddhas and bodhisattvas must be very angry because their golden bodies were smashed. Don't ask for a beating." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "I have a clear conscience. What's the harm in not worshipping the Buddha when I see him? What's the point of kowtowing 1,000 times? Bai Yue, don't you agree?" His tone was calm, but every word was like spring thunder, exploding in by Yue's ears. The mad sword master was rummaging through the ruins. When he heard this, his body shook and his whole person froze. Then, he slowly straightened up and turned his head. His head was almost 180 degrees, so that his back was facing Sun Lang. He only turned his head to look at Sun Lang. His eyes were blank, his expression was strange, and his movements were stiff. His whole person revealed a strange feeling that made people shudder. "You?" Bai Yue opened his mouth to speak. This time, his tone was different from before. It was not as crazy and violent as before when he snatched the sword, nor was it as straightforward as when he acknowledged the thief as his father. His tone became extremely strange. There was an inexplicable gloominess in his hoarse voice, as if he was an evil spirit that had crawled out of hell. "You, who are you?" Sun Lang smiled and said. "Am I not your father? You just acknowledged me before. Why? Have you forgotten me in the blink of an eye?" Bai Yue stared straight at Sun Lang. His appearance was so strange that the little fairy subconsciously moved a few steps and hid behind Sun Lang. In fact, any old man with disheveled hair and a messy beard who had his back to you and then turned his head almost 180 degrees to look at you like this, no matter how you looked at it, it was a very strange thing. This strange feeling even added an inexplicable chill to the ruins, especially when there were broken Buddha statues everywhere. The benevolent face of the Buddha was faintly discernible among the rubble and broken tiles. The face that bemoaned the state of a universe and pitted the fate of mankind was trampled under the feet of the crazy swordmaster. It was as if the divine had been blasphemed, evil had triumphed over righteousness, and demons were dancing wildly above the ruins. Humanity and Buddha nature had lost to the wild bestial nature and evil nature. What a strange scene. But there was no need for the little fairy to hide, because Bai Yue only had eyes for Sun Lang. He looked at Sun Lang and said slowly with a hoarse and low voice, "No, you are not. I know you. Although I don't remember you, I know you. You have appeared countless times in my dreams, in the deepest part. You made me afraid. You made me despair. You made me crazy. You caused me to become like this, not daring to see the light, not daring to shout. Yes, I know you. Even if you turn into ashes, I will still recognize you." When Bai Zhenming, who had been watching from the side, heard this, his pupils suddenly shrank. He looked at Sun Lang in disbelief. He realized that he seemed to have made a mistake. Bai Yue looked at Sun Lang with lifeless eyes and said extremely calm words in a strange tone. All of this was getting weirder and weirder. The little fairy was so frightened that she took a few steps back and hid behind Sun Lang. She poked her head out quietly to look at Bai Yue and murmured, "It has changed. Mr. Bai's view of you has completely changed. It was clearly not like this before, but now he hates you very much." Sun Lang looked at Xie Wei strangely. Until now, this girl still didn't know Xie Wei's identity. She didn't know that Xie Wei was the sister of Xie Ji whom he had killed. She also didn't know that this little fairy had the ability to read minds. After all, Xie Wei and the B*TCH had deliberately concealed it. These 2 days he had been busy dealing with Bai Yue. This little fairy's matter was naturally left behind by Sun Lang. After all, this was not a big deal. In Sun Lang's eyes, this little fairy was just the sword master chosen by Bai Yue. She was a little white mouse worth roping in. After solving Bai Yue's matter, he would start to coerce this little girl. After all, this little fairy was the master recognized by Ji Du and was an excellent experimental subject. He had to do some small experiments with this thought in mind. He said faintly, "Of course, he has a reason to hate me. Stand back, I don't want to hurt you." After that, he looked at Bai Yue and said faintly, "Oh, you can recognize me even if you turn into ashes. That's normal. When we first met, you really scared me. I thought that with our iron relationship, even if you lost your memory, you would still remember how good I was to you. After all," his smile gradually turned cold. "I remember what happened back then so deeply that I will never forget it, but you forgot it just like that. I will be very disappointed." Bai Yue maintained a 180-degree head-turning posture. His head didn't move, but his body moved. His feet moved, and his whole body turned back half a circle. The direction of his body and head finally remained the same, but his situation looked even stranger. They were both lunatics, but what kind of lunatic was the most terrifying? A quiet lunatic. Compared to a lunatic who roared and jumped around all day, a lunatic who always maintained a deathly silence, with dull eyes and expressionless faces, was undoubtedly more terrifying. Bai Yue's current state was like that, as dumb as a wooden chicken. Dumb as a wooden chicken. The original meaning of this adjective was the highest level of praise. If this adjective was used to describe an assassin or a warrior, it meant that this person was calm, indifferent, and almost cold-blooded in the face of a battle. The mad swordsman's eyes were like hooks, as if they wanted a hook onto Sun Lang's flesh. He muttered to himself, I can't remember. I still can't remember. I don't know who you are. I don't know what happened between us in the past, but I know one thing. I only know one thing because when I saw you, there was a voice in my heart shouting, kill him, kill him." He looked at Sun Lang, and his eyes became blood red. "It told me, if I kill you, I will get complete freedom and freedom." Chapter 6:21. Relief. Bai Yue's calm and gloomy voice was suddenly raised. He was almost shrieking when he said the word. These two words contained endless pain, despair, madness, and ruthlessness. What accompanied them was Bai Yu's sudden attack that was like a mad tiger. He raised his hands. His hands, which were as rough as tree bark, were like two pieces of iron that had been tempered thousands of times. His thick fingers raised a gust of wind in the air, raising an ear-splitting shriek. Undoubtedly, Bai Yue was no longer in the state of acknowledging the thief as his father. He had been swallowed by hysterical hatred. He wanted to kill the man in front of him. He did not know the reason, but he wanted to see the result. He was willing to pay any price, as long as he could kill the man. In a moment, the earth was shaking and the ruins were exploding. The stones and beams along the way were smashed into pieces. Bai Yue was like a mad bull, crashing at Sun Lang crazily. "I'm going to kill you. Kill you. Kill you." Sun Lang let out a long laugh. He didn't dodge or evade and went up to meet him. 2 years ago, or right now, nothing had changed. He would never retreat. Bai Yue, who was charging at him with overwhelming momentum, and Sun Lang, who was waving his hands like a flickering light, were the 7 luminaries' sword saints in the past. They had once drawn their swords and fought each other desperately in the final battle. The unfinished battle had never stopped to this day. Neither of them had slept in peace. Right now, they were nothing more than ghosts wandering on the heaven's origin battlefield. Bai Jinming's eyes were suddenly filled with fear. The huge explosion, the quaking under his feet, his father's roar, the raging airwaves. When the wind blew on his face, the slight tingling told him that everything in front of him was not an illusion. But he hoped that it was an illusion. The young man, whom his crazy father had acknowledged as his father, the greedy and shameless young man who called him grandson without any scruples, and the young man whom he had wanted to kill many times, was fighting his father at this moment. 2 shadows, one white and the other gray, were moving and attacking at an extremely high speed, like 2 bolts of lightning colliding in the air. Every time they collided, the sky would collapse. They were evenly matched. No, they were doing it with ease. When Bai Jinming saw Sun Lang's first palm strike, he held his breath. His family had a long history, and his knowledge was extraordinary. With just this palm strike, he realized the huge gap between him and Sun Lang in terms of martial arts. If his palm strike had not been blocked by that little demon girl, perhaps he would have been the one to die. However, what was most worrying and frightening was not his martial arts, but his identity. Patriarch Bai's heart was suddenly filled with a great sense of fear. It was as if an invisible giant hand had grabbed his heart from the darkness. He felt his heart beating extremely violently. His father knew him, and his father was afraid of him. His martial arts were extraordinarily high, and he was even able to gain the upper hand. His father wanted to kill him, so he came to take the golden radiant sacred sword. Could it be? Could it be? While Bai Junming's mind was in chaos, the battle on the other side had reached its climax. Sun Lang and Bai Yue's fists were intertwined, repeatedly bombarding each other, setting off huge tremors and waves of air that stirred up dust and debris into the sky. Bai Yue had lost his memory and his internal energy, but his terrifying strength and impenetrable defense were enough to place him among the top masters. However, Sun Lang was after all a rare grandmaster. Just as Empress had said before, his strength was similar to Bai Yue's, but his rich combat experience and the breadth of his martial arts were almost unparalleled in the world. Compared to him, Bai Yue, who had lost his memory, was like an ignorant person who had entered a treasure mountain without knowing it. He did not know how to exert his advantage in the most efficient way. At first, when facing the murderous and crazy Bai Yue, Sun Lang chose to meet force with force, tit for tat. The two chose the most direct confrontation of strength. However many punches Bai Yue threw out, Sun Lang threw out the same number of punches. The two men's fists collided, carrying out a fierce and swift attack, forcibly suppressing the violent and unbridled spirit of Bai Yue. Bai Yue's spirit was slightly dampened, and Sun Lang was keenly aware of the opportunity. His left hand flipped, and his right hand circled back and forth, alternating between the real and the fake, changing the brute force of Bai Yue's attack and disrupting Bai Yue's attack frequency. When Old Man Bai was in a dilemma, Sun Lang's eyes turned cold, and he pushed out both of his palms at the same time. A terrifying force that could topple mountains and overturn seas pressed down. With Old Bai's barbaric fighting style at this time, he would probably stupidly attack with his palms and then fall into Sun Lang's trap. But suddenly, a sharp light flashed in by Yue's eyes, and he suddenly turned his palms into knives, cutting towards Sun Lang's forearms. Sun Lang was taken aback and exclaimed in surprise. He quickly changed his move, immediately changing his palm into a finger and pointing at the white-haired old man's palm. Who would have thought that the white-haired old man would immediately counter with a punch? His movements were like that of a grandmaster. These moves were dignified and sophisticated. It was the family martial arts of the Bai family. He actually remembered it? Sun Lang was surprised, and then he sneered, "It's good that you remembered it." He took a small step back, turned around, and changed his move. He rushed forward and punched with an indomitable momentum, like a thunderbolt, unpredictable and unpredictable. Bai Yue was still on par with Sun Lang before the battle on the Great Bear Mountain. But after the battle, he was not even qualified to carry Sun Lang's shoes. Bai Zhenming was drenched in cold sweat. He had seen his father use the Bai clan fort's signature martial arts, and every single one of them was incredibly powerful. It was a level that he could never hope to reach. However, these exquisite martial arts and powerful martial arts didn't achieve the results they should have. They were easily countered by his opponent. At the same time, Bai Zhenming could hear his opponent's mocking voice. "How many times have you used this move on me? Why hasn't it improved at all? I knew you would kick my Huan Tiao acupoint after the 7th move. See? Wrong. This is how you should use this move. Take this." Bai Zhenming was shocked, and Bai Yue was furious. Sun Lang was fighting back as he muttered, "There's only killing intent and malice in my heart. I can't remember anything. My memory has loosened, and I've recovered more than half of the martial arts I've forgotten. But my inner energy is still missing, and my other memories have not recovered. Hey, Bai Yue, where's your sword? Why don't you take it out?" Bai Yue shouted, I'll kill you. His obsession with the gold, elemental sacred sword has decreased. Right now, Bai Yue's highest priority is to kill me. The gold, elemental sacred sword has been thrown to the back of his mind. Sun Lang continued, "But you can't kill me now. Why don't you take out your sword and get a try? Maybe you'll be able to kill me with your sword." Bai Yue looked confused, and he seemed to be tempted. He muttered, my sword. But where's my sword? I clearly put it here." He suddenly roared, and the madness in his eyes grew stronger. He looked around and said, "My sword? Where's my sword? Hey, where's my sword?" This roar was directed at Bai Zhenming. He looked at his son angrily, and his face was ferocious and terrifying. Bai Zhenming had a lot on his mind, and he was panicking. When he heard this, he was shocked. When he saw his father looking like he was about to eat someone, he couldn't help but take 2 steps back and stutter, I really don't know." Bai Yue suddenly looked up to the sky and roared. His voice shook the 9 heavens, and it shook Bai Zhenming and the little fairy's ears. He shouted, "The sword is gone. If it's gone, it's gone. It shouldn't have been there in the first place. I'll kill you. Just kill you." Sun Lang saw this and sighed. "Looks like I won't be able to get anything out of him. Hey, little fairy, lend me your sword." Xiaowei hid far away and didn't react when he heard this. He was stunned for a moment and said, The B*TCH said fiercely through the spiritual link, "Ignore him. You're always ordering me around, and you're always making a fuss. Without me, you can't do anything to Bai Yue, can you?" Xiaowei didn't know why Sister Lu was angry and said, Then Sun Lang shouted impatiently, "You're not coming, are you? Hey, old Bai, do you see that sword over there? She's actually the legendary 8-star 8 diamond." Before he finished speaking, the B*TCH shouted, "That's enough." A few explosive sounds rang out, and purple light flashed. The sharp sword Qi tore the black cloth wrapped around the sword into pieces. The demonic purple divine weapon emitted a bright light and turned into a purple stream of light that rushed towards Sun Lang. The B*TCH's character gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, "This shameless bastard! Why didn't Bai Yue kill you?" Although he was shouting, the B*TCH's sword still obediently fell into Sun Lang's hand. The sword shook, and the purple light was dazzling, making a sonorous sound. The poor patriarch glanced at Sun Lang, then at Xia Wei, and finally at the black cloth fluttering in the air. He remembered his previous definition of this girl and her weapon. He was sure of one thing. As expected, this man and woman came to the Bai clan's fort to cause trouble. Then his thoughts were awakened by the brilliant sword light. Bai Yue felt an instinctive threat and roared, choosing to attack first. Sun Lang held a sword in his hand, and his temperament became very different. Even if he still looked lazy, as long as he held a sword in his hand, his whole person would involuntarily emit a sharp light. He teased, "You seem to have awakened the arrogant attribute again." The B*TCH understood this slang and said fiercely, "One day, when you're unprepared, I will give you a ruthless blow." Sun Lang smiled and then waved his sword. The essence, energy, and spirit of the swordsman and the charm of the sword spirit merged into one, displaying the legendary swordsmanship. The white light belonging to the golden radiant sacred sword rose from Bai Yue's body. Just like the scene that happened in the small forest before, the demon sword and the golden radiant sacred sword's power were tit for tat, intersecting and shining. Waves of light flew everywhere, and bursts of explosion sounded. In this terrifying confrontation, Sun Lang swung his sword at Bai Yue's forehead, knocking him out. The light dissipated. "Father." Bai Zhenming saw his old father lying in the ruins and subconsciously wanted to run up to him, but then his body stiffened and stopped. He slowly turned his head and saw Sun Lang, throwing Ji Du back to Xia Wei. The young man smiled at him. "Why didn't you run just now?" Chapter 622. Bai Zhenming froze on the spot, not daring to move an inch. His legs were trembling slightly. He was afraid, a fear that came from the bottom of his heart. He had never felt this way before, this kind of humiliation where his life was in the hands of others and his every move had to depend on others. He was the head of the Bai family, the most influential person in Sichuan. He was the son of the gold radiant sword saint, the leader of the aristocratic families in Qinzhou. He had always been the one who brought fear to others. One word from him could change a person's fate. His every decision was not to be questioned. He was the irrefutable focus and core. Everyone had to respect his opinion and listen to his voice. It had always been like this. Up until now, his life had always been like this. He was a proud son of God, destined to be high and mighty since he was born. But now it was different. Now, he had to be like those who try to curry favor with him. He had to stand in front of another person nervously, entrusting his life to the other person's kindness. He did not even have the slightest thought of resisting, because the difference in power between the two of them made him feel incomparable despair. Moreover, this person might be, the young man opposite him smiled and said, "Why didn't you run just now?" Bai Zhenming opened his mouth. A few ways to deal with this instantly appeared in his mind, but in the end, he lowered his head and said, "I don't dare." Sun Lang nodded and said, "You're sensible." He glanced at Bai Yue, who was lying in the ruins, and said indifferently, "You are his son and have inherited his family business. There are some things that you should know. So, you have probably guessed my identity. So, I won't say any more nonsense. My dear grandson, answer me a question. Where did your father hide the holy sword?" He asked casually, but Bai Zhenming was so scared that his whole body trembled. He said with a trembling voice, I really don't know. The holy sword belongs to my father's imperial army. He must have carried it with him. How would I know where it is?" "That makes sense. You look like you really don't know. But if you don't know," Sun Lang narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, "then what are you going to do to save your little life? Those Jianghu heroes who gathered outside? Whoa, you even have a city-breaking crossbow and a big yellow bow. You sure have guts." Sweat poured down Bai Zhenming's face as he stammered, No, why do you want to kill me?" Sun Lang's smile was very bright. "Wow, I was stabbed in the back by your father in the great desolate mountain. I survived and came back to settle the score with him. With such a big grudge, is it strange to destroy his whole family?" This sentence shattered all of Bai Zhenming's wishful thinking. With a plop, he felt his knees and begged, Jia Shuai, please spare my life." Sun Lang looked at Bai Yue, who was kneeling on the ground. Then, he looked at Bai Yue, who was lying on the ground not far away. He sneered, "Your father's bones are much harder than yours. Don't you think it's embarrassing to kneel so easily?" Bai Jiming turned a deaf ear to this mockery. He kowtowed heavily and said with a trembling voice, "Marshal, the incident in the Great Desolate Mountain was caused by the Emperor's suspicion and jealousy. My father couldn't be loyal to both sides. He could only choose to do his duty as an official. But in daily life, he was very respectful of you. He told me more than once that as long as you were here, he might be able to retire a few years earlier." Sun Lang still smiled and said, "What's the use of saying this now?" Master Bai spoke very quickly. He was afraid that before he could finish, Jia Shui would impatiently kick him and kill him on the spot. No. What I mean is, every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Marshal, you are a hero of the world. Why do you have to make things difficult for the young and old of the Bai family? Now that my father has gone crazy, he lives in pain and confusion every day. This kind of torture is far better than killing him with a sword. Why do you have to humiliate your status? Sun Lang snorted. You mean that mental patients don't have to bear criminal responsibility, right? Sorry, I'm very old-fashioned, and my thinking is very outdated. This kind of thinking that is full of humanitarianism will not work for me. Bai Jiming's thinking speed had never been as fast as today. As soon as Sun Lang finished speaking, he immediately said, "Marshal, please reconsider. Destroying the Bai family is only a temporary pleasure, but the consequences are endless. Although my father is guilty to the marshal, he is still a senior official of 3 dynasties. He is highly respected and has countless disciples. In the court, he has great prestige. Now that he is old and confused, even if you kill him, you will not feel any satisfaction from revenge. Instead, it will cause endless changes. This lowly one dares to ask the marshal to reconsider." He kept kowtowing. Because he didn't use his internal energy to protect his body, his forehead was bleeding. "Marshal, you are a meritorious official of Tianyuan. You were harmed by the emperor. Fortunately, the heavens protected you so that the righteous man didn't die and the hero returned. This is the law of the heavens. Marshal, please do something big. Since ancient times, anyone who wants to do something big must win the hearts of the people. Those who are righteous get more help, while those who are unrighteous get less help. Marshal, as a meritorious official of Tianyuan, you were framed by the emperor. This is the royal family destroying the Great Wall and killing the loyal. It is the emperor who is unrighteous. Since the emperor has lost his Tao, it is the marshal who has gained his Tao. Whether this matter is true or not, there will be a public opinion in the court. The marshal is the people's will, so he should take advantage of the situation and lead the court to success. If he annihilates the Bai family for his own personal grudge, the court will definitely be shocked." He raised his head and said loudly, "I dare to speak. If the marshal destroys the Bai family at this time, I'm afraid the happiest person would be the emperor." For the Bai family patriarch to be able to weave such a well-reasoned argument in such a short period of time had greatly exceeded Sun Lang's expectations. Looking at Bai Jiming, Sun Lang smiled and said, "I thought you were an idiot, but now it seems that you are not." Bai Jiming kowtowed again. "I am mediocre and useless. At most, I am an average person. Compared to my father, my ability and aptitude are worlds apart, not to mention you, who are far better than my father. I am stupid and don't dare to go against the marshal. But since I am a son, it is only right for me to repay my father's debts. What my father has done, I have to take responsibility." Sun Lang smiled and said, "Oh, do you want to use your life to exchange for your father's?" Bai Jiming's expression didn't change. He said softly, "If the marshal has an order, I will follow it. Using my life to exchange for my father's life is considered as fulfilling my filial piety. However, the marshal is a hero of the Tianyuan Empire, a famous general of the world. Your military strategy is far better than mine. You know that a living person is much more useful than a dead person. Killing prisoners is far better than using prisoners. Sun Lang's expression changed slightly. Interesting. Continue. Bai Junming replied loudly, I am Bai Junming, the son of the gold radiant sword saint, Bai Yue, the former patriarch of the Bai clan of West River. I am willing to lead the entire Bai clan to follow the marshal. The wealth of the Bai clan, whether it be land, real estate, treasures, armor, or talents, will be offered to the marshal to atone for my father's sins. The Bai clan is willing to cheer for the marshal and spread the news of what happened at the Great Bear Mountain to the world, to let the world know what happened that day. He was resolute and didn't leave any room for negotiation. Sun Lang was slightly surprised. He looked at Bai Junming and said lightly, If your father heard this, he would probably kill you with a punch. Bai Junming said indifferently, That's why he was indomitable, loyal, and righteous his whole life. He risked his life for a secret decree and ended up like this. Sun Lang shook his head and said, Your personality is really different from your father's. If your father was in your position, he would probably rather die than live in dishonor. He would rather let the entire family be consigned to eternal damnation than bow his head to a traitor like me. Unlike you, who directly sold out the entire empire, Bai Junming said softly, Marshal, please allow me to report. My father was generous, loyal, and indomitable all his life, but I am just an ordinary person. Just managing this family is already exhausting and treading on thin ice. He lived for loyalty and righteousness, but I have to take good care of the family business he passed to me. As for loyalty, my father often taught me that who wouldn't want to be a loyal and filial son, but he revealed a self-mocking smile and said softly, But my family is going to be gone. What's the point of having a country? Sun Lang looked at the kneeling Bai Junming in the ruins and nodded slowly. Interesting, interesting. Old Bai gave birth to an interesting son. Everything had been said, and all efforts had been made. Bai Junming's mood calmed down, and he said softly, Marshal, you praise me too much. Sun Lang pondered for a moment and said, Very well. The lives of your entire family are on your neck, so you better not play any tricks. Bai Junming, right? You might be thinking that you can first feign civility with me. On one hand, you can secretly send away your family's elites. On the other hand, you can write a letter to your father's old subordinates asking for help. It would be best if you could send a sincere memorial to the emperor. Bai Junming was shaken. He said hurriedly, I don't dare. Sun Lang laughed. You don't dare? I feel that you dare to do anything. However, Bai Junming, the imperial court has fed you so well these 2 years. Just what are they planning? I'm sure you have some idea in your heart. In any case, I've never seen someone raise a pig so fat and not kill it. You need to protect your family business, so before you do anything, it's best to think about it. Bai Junming said respectfully, I will solemnly obey the marshal's teachings. Sun Lang waved his hand. Then why haven't you written a proof of your allegiance? What are you spacing out for? Also, hurry up and send me some information that can be used against me. Didn't you want to donate your family property? What? Do you think I'll be polite and refuse to take you? Bai Junming was startled. He slowly got up and bowed. Yes, I'll do it right away. Go, go. Sun Lang glanced at him. While you're at it, don't let anyone outside come in and disturb us. The matter with your father isn't over yet. Bai Junming was startled for a moment before he saw Sun Lang walking in the direction where his old father had fallen. He saw Sun Lang grab one of Bai Yue's legs and drag his old father away, as if he was pulling a dead pig. He saw his father's head knocking on the stones of the ruins, making thumping sounds. However, with his father's martial arts, this little bit of stumbling was nothing. But when he heard the sound and saw his unconscious father being casually handled, Bai Junming felt his eyes sour. It was as if something was violently surging in his heart. He took a deep breath, clenched his fists, turned around sadly, and slowly left step by step. He couldn't stay here any longer. Sun Lang was about to dig a hole to bury old Bai when he suddenly heard footsteps. Xia Wei rushed over. The little minx said angrily, You're going too far. Chapter 623. The little minx shouted angrily, You're going too far. Sun Lang was about to dig the soil when he heard this. He frowned and asked, "What's wrong?" Xia Wei was dissatisfied. "Didn't you see? Mr. White was on the verge of tears. He's such a big person, but he's about to cry. He knelt in front of you for so long without any dignity or face. Even if you have a grudge against old Master Bai, you should take the feelings of others into consideration. You're dragging his father around in front of him, but he can't do anything." Sun Lang nodded. "Oh, I see." Seeing that Sun Lang was still so perfunctory, Xia Wei shouted much louder, and there was even a faint sobbing tone. "Can you listen to others a little? Do you know how painful it is to watch your family suffer, or even die while you can't do anything about it?" "I don't know," Sun Lang said lightly. "I haven't seen them for a long time." Xia Wei was startled. Could it be that he also? She wanted to continue saying something, but she suddenly heard the B*TCH's extremely stern voice in the spiritual link. "Don't mention his family." The little minx was surprised again. What's wrong?" The sword spirit let out an imperceptible sigh and said calmly, "Don't ask. This isn't something you should know." Xia Wei said, "But..." At this time, Sun Lang threw the unconscious Bai Yue to the side. He stretched out his hand, and the ground bulged and rolled continuously. The soil layer was separated, and an invisible force threw the soil out. As he did this, he said, "You have a good heart and are very good at thinking in other people's shoes. You always think about other people's feelings. This is very similar to someone I know." A sincere smile appeared on his face. It was the kind of warm smile that came from the bottom of his heart. Xia Wei had never seen it before. She didn't even know that Sun Lang could show such a pure smile. Sun Lang said indifferently, "I've been like this before, but growing up, you have to experience some things you don't want to experience, and then lose some things that you can't get back. This is very normal. Just like earlier, you saw the sadness and weakness in Bai Jinming's heart, and you even felt hurt for him. This kind of kindness is normal, but if you think about it carefully, it doesn't seem to be justified." He looked in the direction where the Bai clan head had left and said, "Have you forgotten? Previously, he even wanted to kill us and silence the people who brought his father back. If the ones who brought his father back were not us, but two kind-hearted people, how would they be treated? Look at how vast the Bai clan fort is, and how powerful the Bai clan is in West River. If you say that the Bai clan didn't do anything outrageous in the process of their rise, and if you say that their huge family business is clean, then I won't believe it even if you beat me to death." Sun Lang turned around and looked at Xia Wei. He said indifferently, "Bai Jinming is not a good person, definitely not. However, such a bad person only had a slightly tragic end, and yet he attracted your sympathy. For example, in the story, the big bad guy who did all kinds of bad things, and who knows how many good people have died. However, if he was plotted against by someone worse, and watched his family being slaughtered, this big bad guy would also wail and struggle in despair and scream in despair. Should we sympathize with him after seeing his miserable state? If you sympathize with the big bad guy, then what should you say to those innocent people who were killed by him?" Xia Wei seemed to have been caught off guard by the question. She muttered, This Sun Lang smiled and said, "See, if I explain it clearly, you also know that sympathy and kindness are used in the wrong place. However, this is human nature or human instinct. Although your sympathy is wrong, there is nothing wrong with kindness. When faced with the tragic situation in front of you, you will subconsciously show compassion. This is the instinct of a kind soul, a very precious emotion. I don't hate this kind of kindness, but don't be controlled and blinded by this kind of instinct. You have to be rational, think, and then make the right decision. This is the difference between a saint and a bitch." Although the little minx didn't quite understand, as a horned tiger, her spiritual sense was extremely sharp. She stared at Sun Lang and said, "I always feel that you are speaking ill of me in a roundabout way." Sun Lang said softly, "That's not it. It's just that we're fated to meet, so I want to give you some pointers on life experience. As I said, you are very similar to someone I know. In fact, I also appreciate kind character and the instinct of compassion. People will always remember things that they once had but had no choice but to lose. It's a good thing to have a kind heart. At least your heart will be much fuller and more comfortable." Xiaowei looked at Sun Lang thoughtfully. Sun Lang had already buried by Yue. He smiled and said, well, I just said it casually. You just need to listen to it. You don't have to treat it as a golden rule. You have to walk your own path. There are some things that you have to figure out yourself. Xiaowei looked at him for a while and suddenly shouted, that's not right. Sun Lang was startled. He turned his head and said, what's wrong? My 3 views are so correct. The little minx shook her head vigorously. Of course, your words are reasonable. I also admit that you seem to be right, but that's not the problem. How did it become you teaching me a lesson? Sun Lang smiled and said, then what's the problem? Xiaowei pointed at Sun Lang and said loudly, the problem is you. I'm looking for you. It has nothing to do with Mr. Bai. I don't care if he's a bad person, and I don't care if he deserves it. This matter has nothing to do with him. Even if he has committed heinous crimes, it's not a reason for you to casually torture his father in front of him, right? Sun Lang tilted his head. Huh. The little minx took a deep breath. You gave an example before. If a big bad guy does evil things and kills people everywhere, then even if he receives retribution and even implicates his family, he is not worthy of sympathy at all. That's indeed the case. I also think that the feelings of the victim are more worthy of care and consideration than the feelings of the sinner. However, what about the person who tortured the big bad guy and even took revenge on his family? Sun Lang smiled. If that person is also a bad guy, then this is a dog-eat-dog, a good show. If that person is a former victim, then this is a righteous revenge. If that person is a hero passing by out of interest, then this is justice on behalf of the heavens. It's very satisfying. Is there any problem? Xiaowei looked at Sun Lang and calmly said, do you really think so? Sun Lang said lightly, why would I lie to you? The little minx whispered, maybe it's like this. Using the same way to repay the evil person and let him suffer the pain he inflicted on others sounds very fair. But who will carry out all this? The other bad guy, the avenger, the one who upholds justice on behalf of the heavens. No matter which one of them carries out the punishment of an eye for an eye, it means that they also carried out the same acts of abuse and violence. If we know that abuse and violence are evil acts, then why let another innocent person experience all this and be stained with blood? Sun Lang said, wow, your legal concept and humanitarian spirit are really at the forefront of the world. Xiaowei sighed. I'm not joking with you. I really do think so. Sun Lang was silent for a moment and said, I'm not joking with you either. It's just that your problem is unsolvable. You're not a fish, so how can you know the joy of a fish? You're not an avenger, so how can you know what he is thinking? You think that the same form of revenge will stain the innocent victims with blood and make them unable to rest in peace. But maybe he doesn't want peace. He just wants the perpetrator to pay the greatest price, no matter what. Xiaowei murmured, 3 kinds of people. You only mentioned the avenger. Because I'm an avenger. Sun Lang said calmly, hatred can destroy a person. It's true. This is not an empty truth. It will subtly affect your behavior. The little minx said, since you know how. Sun Lang said calmly, everyone understands the truth, but there are some things that you will only know the taste when it falls on your own head. You don't understand. Xiaowei clenched the Ji-do in her hand and whispered, no, I understand. Sun Lang glanced at her. Hey, could it be that at such a young age, you're also carrying a blood feud? She didn't know why, but seeing Sun Lang's appearance, Xiaowei could only smile bitterly. She couldn't say that the hatred she carried was because of the person in front of her. Sun Lang nodded his head. If that's the case, the fact that you managed to pick up the demon sword is truly the start of the king's path. The main character who carries hatred on his back and picks up a golden finger from the heavens or something. But young lady, as someone who has been through this before, let me share some life experiences with you. There's probably no hope for me here. You're still young, still so broken and yet so kind. There's still hope for you. Don't be consumed by hatred. Xiaowei couldn't help but ask, you clearly know that hatred can swallow a person. Why do you still let yourself be swallowed? In the past, I didn't care, but now, didn't you see that I didn't directly kill Bai Xinming? Sun Lang smiled gently. Little girl, you don't understand. Someone told me before that in this world, there are some things that can surpass hatred. I didn't believe it before, but now I believe it a little, Siawei muttered. You always treat me like a child who doesn't know anything. Let's not talk about it anymore. It's time to get down to business. Sun Lang sat on the ground and casually patted Bai Yue's head. Hey, son, wake up and go to school. Bai Yue's eyelids twitched. Then he opened his eyes and muttered, Son. Sun Lang laughed. Your son just ran away in tears and even betrayed you. After you know about this, I'm afraid you'll kill that unfilial son. Bai Yue still muttered, Son, I already told you. Hey. Sun Lang felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. Bai Yue's eyes were wide open as he stared at Sun Lang. His voice trembled as he said, Son. Sun Lang sighed. Just now your style was so serious. Do you need to make this turn so festive? Bai Yue shouted, Son. Sun Lang slapped him. Shut up, old thing. Chapter 624. All of this happened too suddenly. They had just finished a serious and meaningful discussion about life, and in the blink of an eye, the scene changed. After all the twists and turns, the crazy old man was looking for his son. The old man, who was buried in the soil and couldn't struggle, had messy hair and an embarrassed look. His miserable voice contained indescribable emotions. He shouted, Son. What answered him was a merciless and cold slap. Shut up, old thing. On one side was a haggard old man, and on the other side was a young man who was fighting fiercely. One called his son, and the other called him an old thing. Even if a passerby who didn't know the inside story saw such a scene, they could imagine the plot of the 3 episodes. They couldn't bear it and felt injustice. Then, out of justice and morality, they would stop the young man's violent behavior. As Sun Lang said before, kindness and compassion were human instincts. But, Siawei, who grew up in the isolated peach blossom spring, was ignorant of the world and had a clear heart. He was a little goblin who spoke up when he saw injustice and was not afraid of power and violence. After seeing this scene, he couldn't help but laugh. Sun Lang looked back gloomily. The little goblin immediately widened his eyes and covered his mouth. He looked at Sun Lang cautiously with an, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it look. Sun Lang said expressionlessly, Is it so funny? Siawei nodded first, then shook his head fiercely. Finally, he lowered his eyes and said in shame, I'm sorry. At the same time, Bai Yue's sorrowful cry sounded again, like an old man who was abandoned by his ungrateful son. He let out a sad cry, as if he wanted to wake up the soul of his once innocent, cute, and innocent son. Son, I'm your father. Don't you recognize me? His voice was so sorrowful that it made people cry. The accompaniment of the eru could even be vaguely heard. Siawei tightly pursed his mouth, pinched his arm hard, and turned his head to the side. Sun Lang's smile was gradually distorted. Obviously, he was not used to what was happening now. Old man Bai, you're harder to deal with when you're crazy than when you're sober. Bai Yue only looked at Sun Lang affectionately. The love in his eyes was so real. Son, I'm your father. Why don't you recognize me? Sun Lang silently stretched out his hand and beckoned her over. Bitch, come here. When the sword spirit saw this scene, he was already out of breath from laughing. The demon sword would sometimes fly all over the sky and sometimes land on the ground. The body of the sword would vibrate violently, as if it was in 2-3-3-3-3. When the sword spirit heard what the sword spirit said, he quickly hid far away and laughed loudly. What are you doing? As the saying goes, I will take turns to do it. Tomorrow, I will come to your house. Since you have taken advantage of Bai Yue, you will naturally have to return the favor. Mother asterisk her, Sun Lang said Sunran. He was the one who forced me to acknowledge him as my father. I'm also a victim. The bitch personality smiled and said, But haven't you been shouting happily these 2 days? Sun Lang was silent, and then he pretended to pounce. However, he was not close to Jidu, and the bitch personality had suffered a great loss twice. He had already learned his lesson. When he saw Sun Lang's figure move, he immediately dodged and fled, causing Sun Lang to miss. Jidu was flying in the air and said proudly, This old man is crazy. He thinks you are his son again. But it doesn't matter. You just have to lower yourself and call him father. If you make him happy, maybe he will give you the golden, luminous, holy sword when he's confused. Jiddu said, Don't worry. Don't worry. Call him father and make him happy. Maybe he will give you the golden, luminous, holy sword. Before Sun Lang could answer, Bai Yue began to cry. The gold glory holy sword cried out loudly, tears flowing out. He closed his eyes and shouted, My son doesn't recognize me. I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to live anymore. Even my son doesn't recognize me. What's the point of living? What's the point of living in this life? As he cried, he shook his body vigorously, causing the earth to tremble slightly, and a mound of dirt that buried him slowly rose. This old thing was crazy. He had already changed 3 personalities, but his shocking power had not changed at all. But this way of acting shamelessly. Sun Lang stretched out his foot, and the mound of earth around Bai Yue immediately fell down, restraining the old man again. Wow, the bad guys become old. This way of acting shamelessly is so familiar. Bai Yue ignored Sun Lang's sarcasm and cried loudly, Son, my son, how did I raise such an ungrateful person? He cried loudly and involuntarily used his strength. His voice became louder and louder, and his sorrowful cries naturally spread out. Sun Lang was unmoved. He sneered slightly and suddenly said, Old Bai, compared to the scene 2 years ago, this crying scene is not very realistic. Bai Yue was crying. When he heard this, his sobbing became softer and softer. He looked at Sun Lang in puzzlement, only to see that his son still had a cold and indifferent expression on his face, as if saying, You can cry to death. Therefore, he gave up on himself and cried louder and louder. I am despised by my son. I'm so old. I should have died long ago. Why am I still alive? Sun Lang thought and said, No matter how good his acting is, when it comes to the incident 2 years ago, his performance will not be so natural. Humph, this guy's personality disorder is very serious. Hearing this, Xiaowei's eyes flashed with a strange light. She asked softly, 2 years ago, what happened? It was a tragedy that I thought he would never forget even if he went crazy. It would torture him for the rest of his life. Sun Lang said lightly, I didn't expect him to forget it completely. Xiaowei wanted to ask more, but suddenly she heard hurried footsteps. Someone was running in from outside. Sun Lang and she turned around at the same time. The person who came turned out to be the head of the Bai family, Bai Zhiming. Although he did not stop, his face was filled with hesitation and anxiety. He wanted to come over, but did not dare to. This was also human nature. Although he was incomparably fearful of Sun Lang, and was afraid that he would accidentally provoke a calamity that would destroy his entire family, when he heard his old father's extremely sorrowful cries, as his son, he had no choice but to come. Unfortunately, some things were very cruel. When he heard his father's cries and saw Sun Lang's indifferent expression, his heart could not help but jump. He quickly stepped forward and bowed deeply. Marshal, please forgive me. My father's mind is muddled and his memory is gone. He is no longer the famous general of the 3 dynasties. He is just a pitiful old man who has no one to rely on. I beg the marshal to take pity on him and not lower yourself to his level. Since he called me, he must be willing to listen to me. If the marshal has any instructions for my father, why don't you let this one convey it? Sun Lang looked at him with a subtle expression and waved his hand. You can go. Bai Zhenming saw the strange expression on Sun Lang's face and didn't understand what he meant. But now wasn't a good time to think about it. While thanking Sun Lang, he hurried forward and knelt on the ground. Dad, I'm here. Bai Yue heard this and stopped crying. He looked at Bai Zhenming blankly. Who are you? Bai Zhenming smiled bitterly and said softly, I am your son. I am Zhenming. Old Mr. Bai looked up and down at Bai Zhenming a few times. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he shouted, Get lost! Where did this wild boy come from? You dare to take advantage of me? Get lost! Patriarch Bai was stunned. I am your son. Didn't you just call me? I called you my ass. You think too highly of yourself. Bai Yue scolded and then looked at Sun Lang with a sad expression. How can I not recognize my own son? He's my son. Bai Jiming's eyes became blank. He looked at his old father and then looked at Sun Lang standing there. For a moment, he showed an indescribably complicated expression. His expression was so bitter that Xie Wei could not bear to look at it. He turned his head and sighed. The little minx could even hear Sun Lang's low sigh. Ah, in TR's scene, however, Bai Jiming was worthy of being the patriarch of the Bai family. After the initial confusion and sadness, he immediately reacted. What had happened? He knelt on the ground in panic and shouted, "Death penalty! Death penalty! Marshal, please calm down. My father did not mean to tease you. He has gone crazy. He has gone crazy. He doesn't remember anything." The middle-aged patriarch of the Bai family knelt on the dirty ground and kowtowed to apologize. Next to him was Bai Yue, who was in a state of confusion and crying. The son was apologizing for his father. He was frightened and worried for his father, but his crazy father did not appreciate it. In such a chaotic and sad scene, although Sun Lang was unmoved, Xie Wei could not stand it anymore. Mr. Bai must love his father very much. The little minx's eyes were slightly red. She had never experienced this kind of familial love. Xie Wei whispered, "Don't make things difficult for him. I beg you, okay?" Sun Lang snorted and waved his hand. "Get up. I have no interest in arguing with a lunatic. Don't kowtow so often. It's an eyesore." Bai Jinming stood up submissively and glanced at his father again. His father was buried in the ground, and only his head was exposed. His hair was white, his beard was messy, and his face was mottled with tears. He was crying so hard that he looked no different from a beggar on the streets. Compared to the majestic and indomitable father in his memory, he was like a completely different person. His heart ached, and tears fell from his eyes. He hurriedly wiped them away. Sun Lang coldly said, "If you want to cry, then cry. Your father has become like this. It would be strange if you didn't cry. Bai Jiming, you also saw it. Your father is basically unable to communicate with you. You are much more clear-headed than him. If you want your father to suffer less." Bai Jinming bowed his head and said, "If Marshal has any orders, this little one will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." Sun Lang nodded and said, "Good. Let's find a quiet place to talk. As for your father, that old lunatic," he looked at Xie Wei, who was standing to the side. The little minx asked vigilantly, What? Chapter 625. Xie Wei looked vigilant. As a monster, her keen intuition told her that Sun Lang was up to no good. Sun Lang spread his hands and said with a smile, "You just felt that Bai Zhoming had a hard time and begged me to let him go. This was your kind nature acting up, and you couldn't bear to see such a sad scene. I responded to your request and made you feel better. This is because I took care of your compassion, so you should also repay me, right?" It was natural for there to be exchanges. Xie Wei thought so. However, when she saw Sun Lang's smiling face, her little heart trembled a little. In fact, before she saw the real person, the sword spirit had told her about Sun Lang's temperament and character many times. At first, she didn't believe it because with her experience, she really couldn't imagine that a person could be so despicable. However, after seeing the real person, the naive little vixen was shocked to realize that he was even worse than Sister Lu's description. Therefore, after Sun Lang said to her with a smile, "So you should also repay me," the little vixen's fear arose spontaneously. What did he want to do? Just like what Sister Lu said, he was a big pervert, and a big pervert who wanted to play tricks but had no patience. So at first, he would act like a gentleman. If he suddenly felt bored, he would immediately reveal his true nature and do that. So, did he want to? The little vixen was extremely frightened. Just as she was letting her imagination run wild, she heard Sun Lang say loudly, "Hey, Mr. Bai." Mr. Bai's response was still full of sadness. "Son, I'm your father. Are you not willing to call me that?" Then Sun Lang said with a smile, "This is not important. What's important is, do you know who she is?" "Her? What her? Who?" Xie Wei was confused. and then she realized that Sun Lang seemed to be pointing at her. Me? The little vixen suddenly felt that something was wrong. Soon, the premonition in her heart turned into reality. She heard Sun Lang laugh loudly. Keek keek, she is my wife's teeth. The little demoness panicked and screamed, I'm not. I don't want to be caught by you and thrown into the cellar to give birth to your child. Sun Lang was about to continue speaking when he suddenly heard the little demoness say this. He tilted his head and said, Huh? Cellar? Xia Wei's face flushed red. Just as he was about to strongly condemn Sun Lang's ambition, he felt the ground under his feet shake. Then, with his keen spirit sense, the goblin felt a powerful gaze fall on him. No, it can't be. The little demoness slowly turned her head. Sure enough, old Master Bai was staring at her. His eyes were shining with a love that made her panic and some kind of terrifying expectation. An extremely warm smile immediately appeared on his embarrassed old face. The other party almost shouted at the top of his voice, Daughter-in-law. Daughter-in-law, what about my grandson? Is she pregnant yet? I want a grandson. I want to hold a grandson. Sun Lang said fiercely. Of course she's pregnant. She's taking care of the baby. You can't make her angry. If you make her angry, the baby will be gone. Gone. Bai Yue suddenly quivered. His voice became softer as he nodded slightly. Don't make her angry. Don't make her angry. Xia Wei's face turned red. Even she knew that giving birth to a child was a very shameful thing. She said discontentedly, What are you talking about? I don't want to marry you. Sun Lang rolled his eyes and said, It's just a temporary measure. What are you thinking? Only then did the little demoness realize that she seemed to have made a mistake, but she still said discontentedly, Then what nonsense are you talking about? Sun Lang said lightly, I already said that you owe me a favor. I'll let you pay it back now. In a while, we'll go talk about things. You stay here and watch this old guy. Xia Wei frowned and said, You don't have to say, I'm your one. Sun Lang sneered and said, Little demoness, it's not that I look down on you, but if I don't give you a title, how can you watch this old thing? Even if you have Ji-Du in your hand, it's not enough to beat him with one hand. It's settled. You stay here and watch him first. Don't let him run around. Let him stay here obediently and don't move. Without waiting for Xia Wei to protest, Sun Lang turned to Bai Yue and said, I have something to do here. My wife will stay here and talk with you. You're not allowed to move. Just stay here and don't make her angry. Do you understand? Bai Yue nodded submissively. Okay. I'll stay here and don't move. I won't make her angry. Son, come back quickly. Sun Lang looked at the love and reluctance in old Bai's eyes from the bottom of his heart. He couldn't help but frown and snorted coldly, Psycho. He looked up and shouted at Ji-Du hovering in the sky. Be *TCH, I'll leave it to you. This old man's mental state is not very stable. You have to take it easy. B** snorted coldly and fell into Xia Wei's hands like lightning. You bastard. In the face of B***'s brainless scolding, Sun Lang just smiled and then waved to Bai Jinming. Let's go. Let's find a quiet place to talk. In addition, have you arranged everything? Patriarch Bai glanced sadly at his father. There was a flash of sadness in his eyes, and then he replied, I have a strict order. No one is allowed to disturb me. Sun Lang said, that sort is not as easy to talk to as I am. As long as there are miscellaneous people who break in, even if it's your 3-year-old daughter, she will still kill them. You'd better pay attention. Bai Jinming respectfully said, the Bai family's order, regardless of age or age, must be obeyed. Those who violate it will be severely punished without exception. Sun Lang just nodded slightly, then glanced at Xia Wei, glanced at the demon's sword, and finally glanced at old Bai. His eyes flashed with an inexplicable smile, and then he turned and left with Bai Jinming. Xia Wei looked at the back of Sun Lang and said blankly, Sister Lu, what does he want to do? What is he thinking? Why can't I understand? B***TCH replied, It's normal. I don't even know if there is anyone in this world who can understand him. I'm afraid no one knows what he is thinking. The little minx whispered, Is that so? Yes. B asterisk TCH's tone was a little bit angry. Didn't you see that he has been guarding against me? Xiaowei blinked. Huh? Did he? Sword Spirit said coldly. He specifically told me that Bai Yue's mental state is very unstable. What he means is that he can go crazy and hurt people at any time. You didn't forget how Bai Yue looked when he was fighting, right? If he punched you, I'm afraid you will be smashed to pieces. So in order to ensure your safety, I have to stay by your side at all times and be on guard. Xiaowei suddenly understood. In other words, Sister Lu, in order to protect me, you can't do anything else? Sword Spirit only gave a muffled groan. But the little mink still didn't fully understand. But Sister Lu, what will you do? After seeing Sun Lang, I didn't feel much killing intent in your heart. B asterisk TCH said impatiently, don't meddle in my affairs. What's more, his vigilance is not a targeted attack. It's an instinct to be prepared. He told you before that compassion and kindness are human instincts. Humph. Then, for him, vigilance and vigilance are instincts. He would instinctively be vigilant against anyone and anything. I dare say that he has never believed in Bai Jinming, nor did he believe that Bai Yue had completely gone mad. Including you, he's also vigilant against you. The little minx let out an ah, and a trace of panic flashed in her eyes. Sun Lang and she had a grudge against each other, but she still hadn't figured out how to deal with this blood debt. She had planned to observe Sun Lang first and find a way to understand the cause and effect of that matter. Fortunately, Sun Lang didn't care about her identity, so the two could still communicate harmoniously. Sun Lang would even give her some friendly advice and reminders, but he is wary of me. Does he already know? If my trump card is already in my opponent's grasp, then what should I do? Moreover, since he knows that I am his enemy, what is he going to do with me? Why is he still... The little minx was so confused that she couldn't care about what the B asterisk TCH was going to say next. Suddenly, a huge spiritual force exploded in her mind, and the sword spirit said loudly, Didn't you hear what I said? Xiaowei reacted. What? You? Alas. The B asterisk TCH sighed. I mean, don't be afraid. Sun Lang shouldn't know about your matter. He is not such a patient person. Xiaowei felt wronged. Then you said that he is wary of me. I said, this is instinct. The sword spirit said lightly. As he said before, you will feel pity and can't bear to see the injustice in front of you, instead of first considering whether the person who suffered the tragedy deserved it. Pity comes before reason. This is the instinct of kindness. He is the same. He will be vigilant and suspicious of everything, no matter who the other party is, good or evil, she said indifferently. Just like you. Even if he doesn't know that he's the one who killed your brother, to him, you're just an honest little monster he met by chance. He sees the shadow of someone he likes in you. So he thinks highly of you and is willing to talk some sense into you. But while you two are getting along well, I'm sure that he's still wary of you. Furthermore, when he saw you for the first time, he made some preparations. Xiaowei was stunned. What preparations? The sword spirit was silent for a moment. Then he slowly said, he's already mentally prepared that you'll stab him in the back at any time and any place. If this happens, he won't panic or be surprised. He'll only calmly deal with it and treat it as a normal thing. The little minx was stunned. After a long time, she said in a trembling voice, Is it the same for everyone? The B asterisk TCH hesitated and said, There should be no exception. He will treat everyone equally in this world with caution. Xiaowei murmured, Why is it like this? The sword spirit also said lightly, Yes, why is it like this? At this moment, a trembling voice interrupted their thoughts. Daughter-in-law. Xiaowei came back to her senses and heard this sentence. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This old master Bai is really difficult to deal with. She hadn't thought of how to face this gold radiant sword saint. But when she glanced at him, she was stunned. Bai Yue's expression was very strange. There was relief, expectation, enthusiasm, and pleading. He sighed and said, He is a good child. I'm sorry for him. You have to treat him well. Xiaowei was startled when she heard this. She took a few steps forward and squatted down. Old master. What are you talking about? Bai Yue looked at her in a daze. He looked confused, and his eyes were cloudy. He repeated, I am sorry for him, sorry for him. Chapter 6:26. Bai Yue stared at Xie Wei in a daze. He looked confused, and his eyes were cloudy. He repeated, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. His mixed feelings of guilt and uneasiness naturally infected the innocent and kind Xie Wei. The little minx whispered, Old sir, what are you talking about? How would you let him down? The old man blinked and said blankly, Where? I can't remember clearly. I don't know. I just feel that I'm very sorry for him. Xie Wei frowned and wanted to ask again, but the bitch personality said through the spiritual link, Don't waste your energy. Bai Yue is really crazy. He was probably stimulated by the battle in the Great Bear Mountain. Now, he has lost all his memory and is crazy. He can't remember anything from the past. How can he answer your question? However, when Bai Yue saw his daughter-in-law frowning, a look of panic immediately appeared between his eyebrows. He repeatedly said, I'll think about it again. I'll think about it again. Don't be angry, don't be angry. He really frowned and thought hard. From time to time, he shook his head vigorously and muttered to himself. He seemed to hate himself for being incompetent and having lost his memory. Sun Lang's previous sentence of, Don't make her angry, was just a casual remark, but this muddle-headed old man actually regarded it as a golden rule. Xie Wei looked at the white-haired old man and was shocked. He was a hero of Tianyuan. He was once a general in the human army. He had a legendary life and a prominent halo. The magnificent experiences he had experienced in his life were unimaginable to her, a little minx who grew up in the mountains. She couldn't imagine this old man's majestic and strategic appearance. In her eyes, he was just a poor old man. White hair, messy beard, and embarrassed face. He was completely like an old man who had no one to rely on. He was careful, sensitive, and had low self-esteem. She sighed softly, took out a handkerchief from her body, and said softly, If you can't remember, then don't think about it anymore. You could talk to me for a while. You can say anything you want. Let me wipe your face first. Then, she began to carefully wipe the dirt off Bai Yue's face. Her eyes were gentle and serious, and there seemed to be bright stars shining in her eyes. She pursed her lips, and there was a smile on her face. She was a likable girl, and had always been. Bai Yue stared at her in a daze, seemingly stunned. The B*TCH said unhappily, Hey, what are you doing now? This white-haired old man has lost his memories and is temperamental. He's a lunatic. Why are you wasting your energy on him? Xie Wei ignored him. She saw that Bai Yue didn't speak, so she said, Old sir, your beard is too long. How long has it been since you shaved? Do you want me to fix it for you? When I was in the mountains, I often groomed my teachers' beards. They all liked it very much. How about I do it for you? Hearing this, Old Bai nodded repeatedly. Although he didn't know why it was necessary to take care of his beard, since his daughter-in-law said it was good, it must be good. Xie Wei smiled and said, Then stay here and don't move. If you move, son, your son will be angry when he comes back. When Bai Yue heard this, he nodded 3 times more frequently. Therefore, the little minx stood up and looked around. Fortunately, the environment here was beautiful and quiet. Naturally, there was water. She found a well not far away. There was a wooden bucket beside the well, so she directly brought a bucket of water over. When she came back, she saw that Bai Yue didn't move at all. Even his head didn't move at all. After she came back, she first wet the handkerchief with water and wiped Bai Yue's face carefully. Then, she looked up and down at Bai Yue's face. She seemed to be thinking about the style. While she was thinking, she smiled and said, Don't worry, my skills are very good. After all, I use the teachers' heads to practice. They're all very old. Some of them should be about the same age as you, but sometimes they look like children. Xie Wei stretched out his hand and stroked Bai Yue's messy beard. He seemed to be determining what was shaved off and what was left. The beard had been soaked in water, so it had become much softer. Master Li's wife went home to visit her parents, but Master Li didn't care about trifles, so not only did he make a mess at home, he also became a mess himself. I really couldn't stand it anymore, so I just gave him a simple fix. who knew that he immediately went out to show off to the other masters, saying that I was the one who fixed him. So, guess what? Those masters in the valley all came running here and wanted me to fix their beards. If I didn't agree, they would throw tantrums. Really, they were all like children. As she spoke, the smile on her face dimmed slightly. She whispered, "The teachers are very good to me. They all treat me as their daughter, and I also treat them as my father. I trimmed their beards for them." Looking at their happy faces, I was also very happy. However, I actually want to trim my father's beard the most. Bai Yue looked at her and suddenly said, "I am your father-in-law, so I can be considered half a father. It's about the same." Xia Wei's expression stiffened. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and shook his head. "It's not the same." So old man Bai asked again, "What about your biological father?" Xia Wei said sadly, "He's not here anymore. I have never seen him, and I don't even know what he looks like. But the teachers said that he died for the prosperity of the world and for the people of the world. I am proud of him." Oh, the dead could not be brought back to life. Even the crazy Bai Yue understood this truth. After a while, he said in a muffled voice, "I am your father-in-law and half a father. You can treat me as your father in the future." Xia Wei just smiled but didn't refute. Perhaps it was because Bai Yue's eyes were too serious and sincere. Even if this so-called father-in-law was based on one lie and misunderstanding after another, he looked very serious. She used water to shape Bai Yue's beard and hair. She was ready to shave it with a knife. The girl subconsciously took out a short knife from her waist and whispered, "I'm going to use the knife. Don't be afraid." Bai Yue smiled and said, "You can do whatever you want. I promise I won't move." The knife in Xia Wei's hand looked very delicate. The blade was finely wrapped with golden threads, and the leather of the scabbard was also very strange. The texture was warm and lusterless. She didn't know what material it was made of, but just by looking at the scabbard and the handle, she knew that this short knife was very valuable and that the maker had poured a lot of effort into it. But just as the little minx was about to pull it out, she heard the B***TCH laugh and say, "Are you going to use your knife to shave his beard?" Xia Wei was a little confused and asked, "What's wrong?" The sword spirit snorted and said, "If you're not afraid that Bai Yue's beard will break your knife, you can try it. Didn't you see how Sun Lang hit him? When he grabbed his hair and hit his knee, you were so scared that you screamed." The little minx suddenly understood and said, "Oh, can't this beard be shaved?" The B***TCH said disdainfully, "Are you stupid? If his hair and beard can be pulled off so easily, do you think Sun Lang won't turn old Bai into a peeled egg with his temper?" Xia Wei felt that these words were very persuasive. She had seen how angry Sun Lang was when he couldn't beat Bai Yue. With this person's narrow-mindedness, he would definitely not let go of any opportunity to vent his anger. If his hair and beard could be pulled off, he would definitely not leave a single hair behind for Bai Yue. So, here came the problem. If Sun Lang couldn't pull off Mr. Bai's beard, then her knife must be, Xia Wei murmured. "It seems that my knife can't cut off his beard, so the only one who can shave his face is..." Before her voice died away, Jidu leisurely floated back a few feet. The sword spirit said lightly, "But I refuse." Xia Wei was stunned. "Sister Lu, needless to say, don't even think about it. You're my sword master, and I'm the best weapon in the world. It's your blessing that I'm willing to let you control me." Who knew that you, a little minx, would not only be picky, disobedient, and pretentious. If you take me, you won't immediately become famous in the world, but you'll have to be decisive in killing people. But you didn't kill a single person, and you even King asked me to repair your beard. The sword spirit's tone was indignant, and she looked very dissatisfied. She took the opportunity to start scolding her immature sword master. Xia Wei was originally a serious person. As the saying goes, a gentleman can be deceived. If you were willing to reason with her, she would definitely not fight with you. She would argue until you were convinced. This matter was indeed unreasonable, so she immediately gave up. She sighed and then pulled out the short knife she carried with her. "So let's try mine. It's not ordinary iron." Her short knife looked really beautiful, and it was not made of iron. The knife reflected a beautiful light under the sun. It was translucent and milky white, as if it had been carefully polished. The body of the knife was slender and perfect, and the curve was just right. It was obviously a killing weapon, but as a whole, it did not have the slightest sense of sternness. Instead, it revealed a rare sense of tranquility and peace. Bai Yue was stunned when he saw the knife. Xia Wei noticed his gaze. She raised the knife in her hand and smiled. "It's very beautiful, isn't it? I also like it very much. This is a gift for my teachers and friends. From the polishing to the packaging, look at the golden thread and the sheath, as well as the decorations on it. It's all the effort of everyone. However, the raw material of the knife body came from me. This is," Bai Yue suddenly said, "a horned tiger." The little minx's smile froze on her face. The short knife in her hand slipped quietly and was easily inserted into the ground. She trembled. "What did you say? I've seen it before. I think I've seen it before." Bai Yue stared at the short knife on the ground. "This should be a horn shed by a horned tiger." The little minx opened her eyes wide. She looked at Bai Yue, and tears involuntarily accumulated in her eyes. She trembled. "Where did you see it? Do you know other horned tigers? Where did you see it?" Chapter 6:27. Horned tigers were demonic beasts that could shed their horns. Before reaching adulthood, completely shedding the horn that grew when it was young and growing a new horn on the basis was a sign that the horned tiger was about to reach adulthood. Because it could only happen once in a lifetime and was of great significance, the young horn that was shed would be solemnly treasured by the horned tiger as a very memorable object. Just like the dagger in Xia Wei's hand, it was the best present she had ever received. At that time, after she successfully shed her horn, this horn was asked for by one of her closest friends. At that time, he didn't say what he wanted to do with it. However, Xia Wei was simple and kind by nature and had no relatives since childhood. She had long regarded the teachers in the valley as her relatives. Since a relative asked for this shed horn, she just gave it to him. There was nothing to be reluctant about. Then, she received the best present she had ever received in her life. The teachers and companions in the valley all participated in the making of this gift. Everyone took out something that was carefully polished by the teachers in the valley who were good at making weapons. For example, the sheath of the scabbard and the accessories that decorated the dagger were all gifts from their friends. Everyone used their family and friendship to cast this dagger. It was a gift that made her feel very warm. Even when she sneaked away from home this time, she also took this dagger with her to relieve her longing and get encouragement. Therefore, this dagger belonged to her. It was born in her home, had a special origin, and was a unique gift. It could be said that except for herself and her relatives and friends in the valley, no one knew the origin and material of this dagger. After all, it was born less than a month ago, and Bai Yue had no chance to see it or understand it. However, this crazy old man had exposed its origins and claimed that he had seen this before. He had seen the horn of a horned tiger. This could only mean that Bai Yue must have seen similar things before. He must have seen the horns shed by other horned tigers and even had a deep understanding of it. In other words, he must have some friendship with the horned tiger he knew. Otherwise, he wouldn't know the story and origin, and wouldn't know the characteristics of horned tigers that shed their horns. Not to mention, he could tell the origin of this dagger at a glance. In other words, he must have known another horned tiger before. Teacher said that my parents died in the War of Tianyuan, and this old master Bai is a famous general of Tianyuan, so she held back her tears and asked, "Do you know a horned tiger? Do you know any other horned tigers? Was her surname Xia? What's his name?" Bai Yue's eyes widened as he stared blankly at Xia Wei. He stuttered, I don't remember. I just suddenly remembered. I don't know why I forgot." Xia Wei powerlessly sat on the ground. This was related to the news of her family. Even if she was calm and rational, it was impossible for her to be calm. However, the other party was just an old man with a confused mind. Moreover, he had no obligation to answer a question, so she had no reason to get angry at him. Therefore, the little demoness could only whisper, "Why did you forget?" When Bai Yue saw her like this, he hurriedly said, "Don't cry, don't be angry. I'll continue to think, okay? I'll definitely remember." So don't be angry, don't be angry. He was really trying very hard to remember. He closed his eyes tightly or stared hard at the sky. His eyes were a little red, and sometimes the veins on his neck would show. It seemed that he was really trying very hard. But how can illusory memory be so easy to find? What's more, this was something that he had given up on his own initiative. It was easier said than done to find it back. Previously, Bai Yue was stimulated here and became full of killing intent towards Sun Lang. During the fight, he remembered the martial arts that he had forgotten and regained his martial arts memories as the Golden Radiant Sword Saint. Now, he remembered something about the Horned Tiger. This means that his memory lock has loosened again. Xia Wei forced a smile and closed her eyes. Xia Wei reluctantly smiled. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the sadness on her face gradually disappeared. She softly said, "Okay, I was too anxious just now. Don't force yourself too much. I don't really care. After all, they're no longer here. There must be many people who remember them. I don't necessarily have to ask you." Bai Yue's mind was in a mess, and he couldn't distinguish between things. Hearing this, he said in a daze, Is that so?" The little demoness nodded. "Yes, I was just too anxious. After all, hearing the news of your parents must be very anxious. Now that you've calmed down, it's much better. If you don't remember, I can still ask others," the sword spirit whispered. Xia Wei smiled softly. "It's okay, Sister Lu. I'm fine. At the same time, Sun Lang had already started a negotiation with Bai Jinming. They found a house that had not been destroyed by Bai Yue. It was very clean and should be a guest courtyard. As for the core area where Bai Yue usually lived, such as the smashed temple and house, no one cleaned it. It should be an order from Bai Jinming that everything should be kept the same and no one was allowed to set foot in it. After all, as the head of the Bai family, he knew that his father was in a dangerous and awkward position. The water around him was too deep. In addition, his father's mind was in a mess. If he left something behind and it was picked up, it would eventually lead to endless disaster. Bai Jinming sat in the main seat, while Sun Lang sat in the guest seat. However, the posture of the two people was very different. As the host, Bai Jinming sat in fear and trepidation. He almost only touched the surface of the chair with his buttocks. He maintained a cautious posture, ready to get up and apologize at any time. Ever since he took over as the head of the Bai family, he had never sat so carefully, even in front of his father. Sun Lang, on the other hand, casually sat on the chair, crossed his legs, and casually picked up the teacup beside him. The temperature of the tea was maintained at just the right temperature, and the desserts placed on the table were also maintained at their best color, exuding a faint fragrance. Sun Lang and Bai Jinming had chosen to speak here, so they walked over at a leisurely pace. The Bai clan was actually able to prepare everything just right in advance. In terms of details, from small to large, they were indeed a first-class aristocratic clan that adhered to rules and regulations. He lifted the lid and took a sip. Although he did not have the habit of drinking tea, he had to admit that this cup of tea was brewed very well. The fragrance assailed his nostrils, lingered in his mouth. The taste was very good, and the aftertaste was endless. Even he, who did not know much about tea, felt that it was very delicious. Most of the wonderful resources in the world were always in the hands of a small group of people. For example, the hard workers on the street who spent a copper coin to buy a big bowl of tea from a roadside stall after finishing their work would probably never know that a cup of tea could be so delicious. However, this kind of thing, for the people of the Bai family, should be used to it. Sun Lang smacked his lips and sighed. "It's really King delicious. I made a fool of myself in front of you. When I was young, I didn't live such a good life. Your tea master skills are really good. The tea I drank when I was young was made by Master Kong. It was very low class. Oh, I occasionally drank Oriental leaves. It was King disgusting. This Master Kong, he doesn't do his job properly. Sometimes he's in charge of cooking noodles. Sometimes he's in charge of going to Boston to kill people." Bai Jinming listened to Sun Lang's long sighs and sighs. His face was expressionless, but he was cursing in his heart. "Damn it, Jia Buke, White jade works for Tangjin. The reputation of the Jia family is unparalleled. Even I, a country bumpkin in Qinzhou, have heard of it. Why are you pretending to be a wolf with a big tail? However, he was angry. Although he despised Jia Buke in his heart, he did not dare to speak out his true thoughts. He could only agree with Jia Buke and say, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed. The Bai family is extravagant and debauched. Compared to the Marshall's family, the Bai family has a profound family background. Now the Bai family's disciples are too lazy to work. I really can't absolve myself from the blame. Marshall, if you like tea, I'll give you this tea master. Sun Lang showed his snow-white teeth and said with a smile, Little Ming, you really know how to joke. Isn't everything in the Bai family already mine? No wonder every time Father mentioned you, he would show a complicated expression. He said that you were still young and had a bit of a jumpy personality. You needed to be sharpened. How is this F*** jumpy? However, the situation was stronger than the person. Bai Zhenming could only bow his head, not to mention a few words, not to mention a mere team master. Even if this temperamental marshal suddenly wanted to favor the women of the Bai family, he would have to quickly gather all the young and beautiful women in the family for the old man to choose from. Thinking of this, Bai Zhenming felt a little sad. He was the emperor of Sichuan. How influential was the Bai family in Qinzhou? He usually chatted and laughed with the heads of the aristocratic families in Qinzhou. Even the great general of Qinzhou and the prefecture overseer had to greet him with a smile when they saw him. When had he ever fallen to such a state? Sitting here with a smiling face, allowing others to take whatever they wanted, however, he did not have the slightest intention of resisting. It was not because of Sun Lang's past reputation, not because of Sun Lang's current martial arts, not because of his grudge with the Bai family. None of it was because of this. There was only one reason why Bai Zhenming swallowed his anger and trembled in fear, and that was because Sun Lang had appeared in front of him. Only today did he know that there was a kind of person in this world. As long as he stood in front of you, sat beside you, and looked at you, even if it was just a casual glance, you would not be able to say anything that you should not say. You would not be able to form any thoughts of rebellion. Your mind would be seized by him, and you would know that you could not resist and that nothing you did would be of any use. Perhaps it was only today that he realized the weight of the words peerless expert. The saying that he was proud of the Duke and Marquis and looked down on the royal authority was not just arrogant words that did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. How did he cultivate such an aura and boldness? Bai Zhenming suppressed the doubts in his heart and said with a bitter smile, The marshal is right. This humble one has already led the Bai family to submit to the marshal. If you have any orders, the Bai family will obey. Sun Lang nodded and said, Then let's make this short. Tell me about the changes your father has undergone in the 2 years since he returned home after the Great Desolate Mountain War. Chapter 628. Bai Yue had changed over the past 2 years. Upon hearing this question, a gloomy expression appeared on Bai Zhenming's face. If he had to use words to describe his feelings over the past 2 years, it should be pain and happiness. Just like on the last night before school started, even though he still had homework to finish, he was addicted to eating chicken. He knew that he had to do his homework, but he couldn't control his hands. It was too heart-wrenching. He played another game and almost got the chicken. He didn't want to give up. He played another game and almost got the chicken. He celebrated and played another game. In short, he couldn't control himself. He felt that something was wrong while he was on a killing spree. He knew that it would be the beginning of the end after daybreak. He was bound to receive the thunderous fury of his homeroom teacher, but he couldn't stop at all. It was this kind of happiness that he was addicted to for a while, but couldn't stop worrying about the future. This was probably how Bai Zhenming felt over the past 2 years. He was immersed in the happiness brought by the rapid development of the Bai family and the prosperity of the family business. He faintly sensed the hidden troubles under the surface of prosperity, but he didn't know what to do and couldn't do anything about it, this kind of feeling. He slowly recounted what had happened over the past 2 years. The Tianyuan War lasted for dozens of years and was incomparably tragic. There were countless casualties. As the saying went, it was inevitable for a general to die on the battlefield. Long ago, he had mentally prepared himself for his father to die on the battlefield. After all, even someone as powerful as the seven luminary sword sage had died before. Countless generals who commanded armies and strategized had died for their country. Although his father had been an old minister for 3 dynasties and had fought against the sky demon for dozens of years, he didn't dare to say that he would escape the fate of a general. Everyone was very open-minded about this. But what made him feel incomparably fortunate was that his father had survived. Even though he had participated in the final battle that shook the world and was destined to be recorded in the annals of history, he had still managed to survive as one of the few survivors. This was truly the blessing and pity of the heavens for the Bai clan. The fact that he had been able to survive until the end of the battle was the foundation for the clan to prosper for another 100 years. Not long after, Bai Zhiming received news that his father had decided to return home. However, Bai Zhiming didn't mind it too much. After all, at this point, his father's role in the Bai clan was far more significant than it actually was. His contributions to the Bai clan had already spread far and wide. Even if he were to retire and resign from his position, it wouldn't hinder the rise of the Bai clan. Moreover, as a son, he also hoped that his father, who had been on the battlefield all his life, would be able to return home and enjoy the rest of his life, and would not be tired again. Thus, his father returned home, bringing with him countless rewards and honors, as well as countless legends and stories. Under the escort of the emperor, the farewell of the officials, and the escort of his old subordinates, he set off in the center of Hangzhou City and returned to his hometown. Along the way, the atmosphere was extremely grand. Hundreds of local officials came to greet him, the aristocratic families bowed their heads, and the emperor specially gave him the imperial carriage to send him off. The ceremony was as grand as the emperor himself. It was a rare honor in the world. When the local citizens heard that old Marshal Tian Yuan had retired and was returning to his hometown, they even kowtowed and burned incense along the way. For an old hero who had fought against the sky demon since his youth, everyone gave him the greatest respect. When the news reached Qin province, the entire province was shaken. The Bai clan castle was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and the atmosphere was joyous. They spent a lot of money to build a garden for their ancestor so that he could enjoy the rest of his life. Banquets were set up early in the morning, and the villagers, regardless of their status, were all served to fill their stomachs. The Bai clan also swept away all the opera troupes in Qin province. The opera troupe was performed for an entire month, and even the idlers on the streets knew that since old Master Bai had returned alive, the Bai clan castle would probably be unparalleled in wealth. If even the people on the streets knew about it, the Bai clan castle naturally knew about it as well. In this joyous atmosphere, they finally welcomed their ancestor back. On that day, it could be said that all the talents of the Ming province had gathered. From the prefecture overseer and the great general of the province to the 9th-ranked post-house officer, the elders of the aristocratic families, and the grandmasters of the major sects, everyone who could attend the banquet was present. Even the most arrogant and righteous person would not dare to disrespect the Bai clan at this time. On that day, the Bai clan of the West River's reputation and power had reached its peak. Naturally, the banquet to welcome their ancestor back in glory was a joyous occasion. After that day, the Bai clan's various businesses experienced an explosive and comprehensive development. All of their competitors in business took the initiative to give way to them, and the sellers who wanted to purchase land also relented. There were even a large number of commoners who came to the Bai clan to donate their land. Many heroes and famous people also came to invest. They all seemed to know that the Bai clan's era had arrived. Everyone in the Bai clan still remembered the sense of accomplishment and satisfaction during that period of rapid development. Naturally, Bai Zhiming felt the same way. As the head of the Bai clan, he was even more complacent. He thought to himself that his father had fought for the country for decades, and finally, His Majesty did not mistreat him. It was time for the Bai clan to soar into the sky. But very quickly, he felt a little unease. The Bai clan's various businesses continued to advance triumphantly. The attitude of the Qin province officials toward the Bai clan became more and more friendly. Everything was progressing in a good direction, but he still felt a glimmer of unease. First, it was the court. His Majesty's attitude was too warm. His father had just settled down when the emissary from the court came again. He inquired after the great ancestor's well-being and asked him if there was anything he was unaccustomed to since he had just returned home. He also brought with him the rare treasures and precious medicinal herbs allocated by the inner manor. Bai Jinming was feeling proud of the vastness of the emperor's grace. Not even half a month later, the emperor's emissary came again. The grandeur of the emperor's favor was indeed a good thing, but there was also a saying that being in the emperor's company was like being in the company of tiger. The emperor's warmth at first made one feel touched and proud, but this warmth was too frequent and could lead to unease. After all, it was hard to know what was in a person's heart. Human feelings would slowly fade. Furthermore, since ancient times, emperors were naturally cold people. If you didn't work for him all day, how could he remember your kindness all day long? Usually, even if a famous official was retiring, the emperor would at the beginning pretend to inquire about their well-being. Over time, at most, he would send an emissary to express his concern during the holidays. That was already a great kindness. If you met someone who didn't pay attention, or if your rank wasn't high enough, you could only wait for a political mission to arrive. Only then would there be news of XXX visiting a retired comrade. Thus, the emperor had actually maintained a high frequency of concern for a full 2 years. This made Bai Jinming think too much. He had read too many history books, and there were many examples of the emperor's unpredictable power, so he was a bit flustered. What was worse was that in this world, there were far more stupid people than smart people. There were far too many people who didn't know what was going on. Ever since the elder ancestor returned home and the Bai family's reputation reached its peak, the Bai family's strict family style gradually couldn't stop. After all, people's hearts were shallow and easy to change. Even an honest man would gradually become arrogant after being bowed to and fawned on for a long time. People were creatures that were easily swayed and changed by inertia. Furthermore, the emperor's high frequency of sending an emissary to express his concern in the eyes of an astute person like Bai Jinming. This implied a faint sense of danger. However, in the eyes of the people below, this was irrefutable evidence of the emperor's grandeur of the Bai family. Since the emperor was supporting them, what were they afraid of? They could do it with all their might. Don't panic. When someone took the lead and benefited from something, the other people who were still watching would also rush forward to take the lead and drag the few who were common to it. Thus, the Bai family's family style gradually deteriorated. As for running amok in the village and bullying the people, that was no longer a problem. In any case, no one dared to interfere. Yes, no one dared to interfere. Even if they wanted to interfere, they couldn't. Although Bai Jinming wanted to rectify the family style, he was only the head of the Bai family and the head of the Bai family. He couldn't control his uncles from the branch family. He didn't have the ability to do so. There was only one person who could control the Bai family, and that was the elder ancestor, his father. As long as the elder ancestor said a word, everyone would treat it as an imperial edict. However, this was the second thing he was worried about. Since his father returned home, he didn't see any clues at first. However, as time passed, he found that his father was a little abnormal. He became a little gloomy and introverted, no longer as enthusiastic and forthright as before. At first, he thought that the elder ancestor had gone through such a fierce battle in the Great Bear Mountain, where many of his comrades died, and he survived alone. However, he seemed to be wrong. His father's gloomy temperament didn't change, but his memory and patience were getting worse and worse. Sometimes he would yell, lose his temper, hit the air, and shout some words that no one understood. Sometimes his behavior was even worse. For example, he strictly forbade others from praising him or praising him. If you praised his military achievements and honor in front of him, his face would immediately darken. If you dared to mention his great service in protecting the country in the Great Bear Mountain battle, he would probably flip the table and give you a beating. His father's actions became more and more abnormal, and the frequency of his madness increased. Bai Jiming's heart became more and more panicked. He couldn't rectify the family style of the Bai family, and he was also worried about what kind of unforeseen event would happen if news of his father's madness spread. At the same time, the frequency of the emperor sending envoys to express his concern increased. The Bai family's power grew greater and greater, and the family's reputation grew worse and worse. He always felt that this was a very bad omen, but he didn't have the courage or methods to stop it all. Not long ago, a great change occurred in Mingzhou. At the same time, his father went into an unprecedented bout of madness, and then brazenly ran away from home. No one knew where he went. Then his father came back. He was brought back by someone. The person who brought him back was someone who should have died on the Great Bear Mountain. As soon as he appeared and said a few words, Bai Jiming knew what he was here for. His guess about the Great Bear Mountain had obviously become reality. After listening to Bai Jiming's story, Sun Lang slowly nodded. A strange light flashed in his eyes, and he slowly said, "You mean when old Bai first came back, although he was somewhat introverted and gloomy, he was still relatively normal and didn't do anything openly crazy. However, as time passed, he became crazier and crazier. Moreover, every time the emperor's envoys came, he became crazier?" Bai Jinming's heart thumped, and he felt his heartbeat accelerate a little. He said in a low voice, "Yes, yes." Sun Lang smiled. "Then, do you think during this time there is some connection between the blowing of the silk threads?" Chapter 629. Sun Lang smiled. "Then do you think there is a connection between this and the cessation of the silk?" Bai Jiming's face instantly turned pale. Although he didn't know what cessation of the silk was, he faintly sensed the meaning behind Sun Lang's words. In reality, he had long suspected this, but he didn't dare to think too much about it or say too much. Moreover, he couldn't think clearly about this matter. Even if it was his father, he couldn't get involved. Yes, in these 2 years, how many times had the emperor's emissary come? Every time he came, his father's madness worsened. Once or twice could be said to be a coincidence, but 10 or 20 times. Bai Jiming was not stupid. With his cautiousness and suspicion, he had long suspected this possible pattern. However, it was the emperor and the emissaries sent by the emperor. What could he do? Stop them from seeing him? Or even think of a way to stop them from entering Sichuan? That was impossible. The so-called all under heaven belongs to the emperor was not a joke. Moreover, although everything the Bai family had now was because of his father's protection, in the end, it still came from the emperor's favor. He didn't dare to investigate the emissary, so he could only take advantage of his father's sobriety to give him some advice. He didn't expect his father to fly into a rage after he understood and throw a rare tantrum at him. He told him not to think too much and then chased him away. Although he was already the head of the Bai family, in his father's eyes, he was nothing more than a child who could be beaten whenever he wanted. Just like this, Bai Jiming faced his increasingly insane father. Even with the Bai family's wealth and power, there was nothing he could do. He visited countless famous doctors and asked for countless miracle medicines, but there was nothing he could do. In the face of Sun Lang's meaningful inquiry, his face was pale and his heart was filled with fear. There were some things he didn't dare to mention. However, he was still a smart person. The emperor was far away on the horizon, while Sun Lang was right in front of him. The two were like fire and water, so it was clear at a glance which side he stood on. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "I think father's madness cannot be separated from a court. The emperor at least knows about this matter." Sun Lang nodded happily. "I think so too. It's most likely that the emperor is ready to get rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness." "Ha ha, ha ha, don't you think so?" Bai Jiming was sweating profusely. Sun Lang, however, did not care about what he was thinking. Enraptured, he said, "That's why I said that the old man's abacus was always so good." He pretended to be a benevolent emperor in front of the court and the public first. He asked about your father's well-being and gave him gifts all day long. Even the dumbest public intellectual couldn't find any fault with his policies toward the retired soldiers. Patriarch Bai's face turned even paler. He already knew what Sun Lang wanted to say. Sure enough, Sun Lang slapped the chair. But what about your Bai family? The imperial court gave you face, but you took advantage of it. Relying on your father's power and the emperor's favor, you committed all kinds of crimes, causing the people's resentment to boil and your family's reputation to deteriorate. Tell me, if the emperor accidentally knew that your Bai family had done such shameless things, what would he do? Under Bai Junming's horrified gaze, Sun Lang cupped his fists towards the horizon and said seriously, "With the wisdom and might of my imperial majesty, it's only natural that he would be enraged. Even if your Bai family is a descendant of meritorious service, it's only natural that we would investigate." Investigate? Why wouldn't we investigate? What are the benefits of bringing down your Bai family? He counted with his fingers and said, "First of all, this is the family of the heroes of Tianyuan. They are unstoppable and very typical. After all, your father's identity is right there. Judging from this, it can be seen that these descendants who have made meritorious contributions to the court are all corrupted. What an unhealthy trend. We must investigate. You see, by using this as a pretext, we can achieve the political balance of suppressing the military officials of Tianyuan. How wonderful. Second, how many people's wealth has been taken by your Bai family for more than a dozen generations? How many territories have you occupied in the past 2 years? Of course, these ill-gotten gains will be confiscated. Who will be rewarded with this fat meat? Of course, it will be rewarded to those brave men who didn't associate with your Bai family and fought against you to the end. What's the saying again? Everyone kicks a man who is down. Sun Lang sighed. Third, the gold glory sacred sword is in your father's hands. The court has no excuse to take it back. This time, we can finally get what we want. Then, we will find a way to make your father commit suicide out of shame and shut him up forever. Some secrets will never be leaked out again. After all, the old emperor didn't know that I was still alive a few days ago, right? Bai Junming's face couldn't be described as ugly anymore. What Sun Lang had said was exactly what he was worried about. He had completely hit the nail on the head with his biggest worry. While his mind was in a mess, he heard Sun Lang say faintly, "Little Ming, I think your family is doomed. The emperor even wants to kill me. Your father has been his white glove and has done the dirty work for him. How can he live a long life?" Bai Junming said in a trembling voice, "Well, the emperor won't go too far. Otherwise, alas, it's the clothes. It's the clothes." Sun Lang sighed. Before, you might have cared about his reputation. But now that he has found out that I'm still alive, how can he care about that? Not many people survive the battle in the Great Bear Mountain. Your father is the one who knows the inside story the most. If he stands out and says something now, there will be chaos in the court. How can he not be worried? Bai Junming hesitated. There were some things he didn't dare to say. If you don't die, it will be a great disaster. My father is loyal, and the emperor must know. So, you should try to get my father's help now. Sun Lang looked at his expression and guessed what he was thinking. He was about to say something when hurried footsteps came from outside. The person seemed to be hesitating whether or not to come in. Sun Lang said considerately, "It seems that he is in a hurry. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to come in. Go take a look." Bai Junming hesitated for a moment. He then stood up and went outside. After he met with the person said a few words in a low voice and handed a letter to Bai Junming. Sun Lang ate the pastries as he watched from aside. With his hearing, as long as he wanted to, even if the other party used secret voice sending to communicate, he could still intercept the information. After hearing a few words, his expression changed and showed an interested expression. Bai Junming's body swayed. After swallowing the soft and sweet pastry in his mouth, Sun Lang took a sip of tea and said leisurely, "It seems that something big has happened." Bai Junming's face was ashen. He turned around and opened the letter. After reading it, he said in a low voice, "A large number of Wulin people are coming to Weichuan and gathering in the surrounding towns." They said that when many Wulin people gathered in Huaichuan to search for the divine sword, someone suddenly attacked and killed more than 300 innocent Walin people and stole the divine sword. Many of the victims were disciples of big sects and grandmasters, so the Jianghu was shaken. Wow, this is much worse than what Xie Sun did at the concert on Mount Wangpan, Sun Lang exclaimed. Who is it that is so much worse than what Xie Sun did at the concert on Mount Wangpan? Bai Jinming stared at Sun Lang deeply and said bitterly, They claim that the murderer is my father. After the survivors described him, some people who knew my father also said that he did look like my father. Also, they said that the murderer's attacks were fierce and unstoppable. He was already a great grandmaster, so the possibility of someone impersonating him is too low. Sun Lang nodded and said, It was indeed your father who did it. Corpses are everywhere. So, they're here to settle the score? Bai Zhenming said in a low voice, They know my father's reputation and identity, so they do not dare to go to him and ask for his punishment. So, they're gathering helpers and building up momentum. Many disciples of big sects have been killed, so the few famous sects in the Jianghu, such as the Sanskrit Temple, Jinyang Palace, and Star River Sword Palace, have all sent their elders to Qinzhou. The other sword sects and big sects have also taken action. At the same time, they have also hired scholars and storytellers to build up momentum in various places, saying that princes who break the law are punished the same as commoners, and that even the heroes of Tianyuan cannot kill the innocent. Sun Lang clicked his tongue. What a coincidence! Just when we were talking about the emperor's scheme, your father handed this fatal weakness to the emperor. Bai Zhenming's face was pale. Looking at Sun Lang, he said with a trembling voice, Marshal, that really is my father. What he was implying was it you who ordered him to do this? Sun Lang rolled his eyes. I have a grudge with your father, so there is no need for me to go to the trouble of slandering him. In fact, I am the one who acted bravely for his cause, okay? I saw your father killing the innocent, so I came out to stop him. I had a big fight with him, and only after I knocked him out did he wake up and acknowledge me as his father. I have been in charge of watching over your father, this lunatic, for the past few days, preventing him from killing anyone else. You should be thanking me. Bai Zhenming lowered his eyelids. Yes, Sun Lang glared at him. You mother of asterisk her. It seems like you still don't believe me. What? After seeing your father treat me as his own father before, listening to everything I say, you suspect that I'm the one who instigated him to kill the innocent and slander the Bai family. Bai Zhenming said with a bitter smile, I wouldn't dare. What use is there in saying this now? This matter has already been done, so what does it matter who is the instigator? Sun Lang threw the teacup on the table and glared at him. Mother of asterisk her, you still don't believe me? Let me tell you, I hate being wrong the most. You don't believe me, do you? If you don't believe me, I will immediately go find your father and tell him that if he can go to the capital and take the emperor's dog head, I will call him father. Do you think he will go or not? Between doing this and killing hundreds of Jianghu hooligans, which one do you think is more worthy of slandering the Bai family? Bai Zhenming heard this and felt the hair on the back of his head stand up. He quickly stopped Sun Lang and said, I believe you. The marshal is indomitable. He would not do such a thing. Sun Lang kicked Bai Zhenming to the side and sat down again. He said coldly, Mother of asterisk her, I gave you face, but you don't want it. Bai Zhenming was a sensible person. He knew that since this matter had already happened, there was no turning back. Other than stubbornly resisting to the end, there was no other way. So, he fell to the ground and did not get up. He walked a few steps on his knees and begged Sun Lang, Marshal, the Bai family is in danger. Please help us. Chapter 630. This turn of events was beyond Sun Lang's expectations. He had thought that the Huaichuan Instance Dungeon, where he challenged the boss and looted the divine weapons, would have been closed and the martial artists would have left by now. He did not expect this to happen. It made sense. Bai Yue had been in a frenzy when he was looking for his sword. Anyone who tried to stop him would be killed. From the small group of chivalrous men that he had killed to the Chongjiao prince who had suffered an unexpected misfortune, to the martial artist that he had blasted into sieves at the Huichuan mountain pass. These people all had parents and masters. It would have been fine if it was just a case without any clues, but now that the murderer was known, how could the relatives of the victims let it go? Moreover, he could not help but recall what Lin Wuying had said that day. Huichuan had actually become a dark gathering place for evil, because there was a ferocious demon taking the blame in the depths of the mountains, where there was no one around and was far away from the secular world. Heroes from all walks of life would naturally seek revenge and be decisive in killing. Now, it was really a good time. The blood debt of those who died for no reason will be shouldered by Bai Yue, the sucker. Sun Lang said indifferently, Bai Junming, they are coming with ill intentions. It seems that they are going to hold a heroes' meeting in front of your house and force your father to reveal himself. Bai Junming's face darkened. How dare they? Sun Lang glanced at him. Why wouldn't I dare? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Why don't they make use of it? Or perhaps someone is adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes. Master Bai's face changed when he heard this. He kowtowed and said in a more serious tone, Marshal, please help us. Sun Lang rose to his feet and clasped his hands behind his back. Your father is the Gold Radiance Grand Sword Sage, an elder of 3 dynasties. He has a great reputation in the Emperor's favor. The Bai clan has a great reputation in the West River and is also one of the top clans in the Qin province. With your clan's political status, official background, and financial power, as long as you refuse to admit it, those Jianghu people can't do anything to you even if they come in full force. Bai Junming was stunned for a moment before a bitter smile appeared on his face. Marshal, please don't tease me anymore. If the Bai family was still in the Emperor's favor, this matter wouldn't be a big deal. But now, His Majesty has already shown killing intent towards my family. Why would he continue to protect us? I'm afraid that's not all. The Huichuan massacre, this time, will be the Emperor's breakthrough in dealing with your Bai family. Sun Lang glanced at him and said calmly, So, you expect me to stand out and help the Bai family resist the pressure from the capital, support you, and stand against the Emperor for the Bai family? Bai Junming kowtowed again. Marshal is wise. The Bai family was willing to submit. Marshal, treat it as buying horse bones with 1,000 taels of gold to win over the hearts of the court. Sun Lang sneered. You make it sound so easy. Let me ask you, if your father recovers his memories in the future, continues to be loyal to his ruler, loves his country, and stands against this daddy, what will you say? Bai Junming was startled and hurriedly said, My father won't. Bai Junming, you'd better be smart when you talk to me. Don't say anything stupid. Sun Lang said coldly, Don't you know what kind of person your father is? Do you think he'll thank me for protecting the Bai family after he wakes up and learns about the past? He will only beat you half to death, hate you for siding with me, for betraying the imperial court, for causing the emperor to be passive, for causing the Bai family to be unjust, and for causing his illustrious reputation to go down the drain. Then, this old bastard will come to me with the determination to die. After I kill him, will you still obediently continue to be his lackey? Bai Junming was silent for a moment, and then he kowtowed heavily, making a muffled sound. He gritted his teeth and said, Yes. Sun Lang squinted his eyes. The Bai family doesn't belong to my father alone. I can't drag the whole family into the abyss because of his loyalty. As the head of the Bai family, I took over the position from him, so I have to take responsibility and bear the responsibility. How can I ruin the public interest for personal reasons? Bai Junming said resolutely, Although I'm the son, I'm also the head of the Bai family. The thousands of lives of the entire family are on my shoulders. How can the family property of our ancestors be destroyed in my hands? Sun Lang looked at him from the corner of his eyes. You sound so righteous, but don't avoid the most important question. What do you plan to do with your father? Bai Junming gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, My father's mind is in a mess, and he's becoming more and more deranged. Marshal, please take pity on him and spare his life. If he's stubborn. As he spoke, his voice became choked with sobs. After all, how could he have the heart to say such cruel words like, "Marshal, you can kill him as you wish"? Since ancient times, loyalty and filial piety were difficult to satisfy both sides. Between the life and death of the father and the survival of the family, it was a difficult choice. However, my father must have encountered a similar dilemma in the past. He made his own choice, and without any complaints or regrets, he bore the corresponding price. His son must not lose his face. Bai Jinming took a deep breath, and his tone became cold. If he's stubborn, Marshal, you can deal with him yourself. Sun Lang looked at him and didn't say anything, as if he was waiting for something. Sure enough, the head of the Bai family looked up at Sun Lang and said calmly, "But I'm his son after all, so I dare to say a few words. In this world, loyalty doesn't need to be protected by affection. Marshal, you only need to show your strength and deter me, and I can't resist. For the sake of the family, even if you kill my father, I have to bow my head and bear it. After all, coercion and temptation are also good ways to manipulate people's hearts. This I'm very clear about." Sun Lang laughed. But since ancient times, those who have made a career will not blindly use cruel coercion and oppression. Yes, Bai Jinming looked calm and nodded. I've read the history books. In ancient times, there were brave warriors who fought bravely and changed the fate of a country. These heroes, who were known as assassins, promised their masters that they would fight bravely and die to succeed. They were not elite warriors trained by their masters since they were young. They were not driven by fear and interest. The motivation that made them disregard life and death to fight bravely is often the strongest emotion in their hearts. Sun Lang said lightly, "Kindness, courtesy, dignity, and gratitude. That's right. With only medicine, punishment, and wealth, even if you can nurture fearless death warriors, you can't nurture true assassins. That's because true assassins need not only courage, but also other things." Bai Jinming kowtowed for a long time. "I'm the same. If Marshal can spare my father's life, Bai Jinming is willing to die to repay your kindness." The meaning behind his words was very simple. If Sun Lang killed Bai Yue, then Bai Jinming would be afraid of Sun Lang's power and the threat of the whole family's life in his hands. He could only swallow his anger because he had to protect the safety of his family. If Sun Lang gave him an order, he would most likely obey it obediently. But it was hard to say how efficient and enthusiastic he would be in carrying it out. However, if Sun Lang spared his father's life, he would truly consider himself as a loyal subordinate. He would take the lead and serve Sun Lang wholeheartedly without any hesitation. This was probably the difference between getting your body and getting your heart. If you only got your body, then you could do whatever you wanted. But if you got your heart, then there were some positions that you couldn't think of. The other party would take the initiative to unlock them for you, racking their brains to show them to you. This was probably the difference between pure love and humiliation. Sun Lang had a whole new level of respect for the head of the Bai family. He liked people who understood things, especially people who thought things through clearly, because such people knew their limits and knew when to advance and when to retreat. They wouldn't foolishly do something stupid. Not only would they bring a fatal disaster to themselves, but they would also cause a lot of trouble for others. Sun Lang nodded and said, "Good, interesting. Bai Jinming, I promise you for the time being. This time, if you have any problems that you can't solve, I will help you. As for your father's matter, I want the gold luminary sacred sword. As long as I can find a sacred sword, then everything else can be discussed. Do you understand?" Bai Jinming let out a sigh and said softly, "Thank you, Marshal, for your help." Sun Lang said indifferently, "All right, get up." He smiled coldly in his heart. Helping the Bai family and Bai Jinming was originally something that he had planned. It wasn't that he was interested in the Bai family's property. Even when Bai Jinming promised to support Sun Lang and expose the matter of the Great Desolate Mountain, he didn't care much about it. He only wanted to get the gold luminary sacred sword. The other things weren't too important. However, the timing was a little tricky. After all, the Dog Emperor was a very suspicious person. He liked to fabricate things that did not exist and then report them to the media. He insisted on creating a big news. Now that he had appeared in the Bai clan's castle and had colluded with the Bai clan and Bai Yue, with the emperor's suspicious personality, he would definitely be suspicious of this and that. After all, this old thing was really guilty. If he was guilty, then he would want to cause trouble. If he wanted to cause trouble, then he would have to make a move. If he made a move, then he would reveal his weakness. If he revealed his weakness, then he would be able to counterattack. Moreover, Sun Lang narrowed his eyes. Moreover, a certain someone had escaped halfway, and her whereabouts were still unknown. Given her personality, she probably wouldn't return to Ming Province. She would definitely come to Ming Province to do some small work after hearing about the Bai Castle. Even if she didn't come herself, her father, the emperor, would let her come. After all, she was her father's most convenient chess piece. A sharp light flashed in Sun Lang's eyes. He remembered what the Will of Fire had said to him in Ming Province. The emperor, the ancestor demon sword, and longevity. He thought of Empress Tensei and the Tianyuan saber that her father had personally bestowed upon her. He also thought of the crazy Bai Yue, the missing gold luminary sacred sword, and the strange illness that caused the imperial envoy to go crazy as soon as he arrived. He would never believe that there was no connection between these people. He faintly felt that Bai Yue's madness seemed to be the key to this matter. And the key to this key would have to wait for the emperor to send someone to deliver it. Sun Lang glanced at the clueless Bai Zhenming and thought to himself. He would take advantage of this great opportunity to clarify some things. Chapter 631. Then, the matter was temporarily settled. Logically speaking, Bai Zhenming would not have panicked at all if he had encountered such a matter in normal times. His Bai family was so well favored by the emperor and was the descendant of a sword sage. His reputation was second to none in Qinzhou, and he was the nominal leader of the aristocratic families in Qinzhou. How could he not even handle such a matter? What? You said my father killed someone? Are you kidding? That's impossible. Who was my father? He was a senior official of 3 dynasties, had made meritorious contributions to Tianyuan, and had countless disciples and old friends. He was the gold-radiant sword sage, had fought the sky demon all his life, and had participated in the last battle of the Tianyuan War. He was a living legend and an unparalleled general. You said he killed someone in Huaichuan? F*CKU. What? What are you doing here? Denouncing me? Slandering my Bai family? You want to drag my father out and punish him? Do it if you can. That was the gist of it. In short, they would deny it. With the power of the Bai family, his father's strength, and the emperor's favor, there was nothing in this world that they could not handle. Killing some martial artists was no big deal, but it was impossible now. First of all, his father had gone crazy and could not even meet people, let alone deny it. Second, the emperor's favor was gone, and the emperor even wanted to take the opportunity to kill the Bai family. They could not rely on him. Therefore, Bai Zhenming naturally panicked. But if there was someone who could offset the disadvantage of his father and the emperor, the Bai family would not panic. Therefore, Sun Lang's promise gave Mr. Bai a very important protective talisman. With a sword sage in the family, although they would fall out with the imperial court, damn it, the emperor did not have good intentions in the first place. Was the Bai family supposed to wait for death? No matter what, they had to get through this. Since Sun Lang had agreed to help, he had enough confidence. As for the property, it was natural. After all, if the property belonged to Sun Lang in name, he could protect it more carefully. As for the losses, the marshal had big plans. The Bai family was widely influential and was the descendant of a sword sage. It had a special meaning. The old man was in need of people. If he relied on them now, no matter how many losses he suffered, he would be able to recoup them in the future. Bai Zhenming's plan was meticulous. He even secretly calculated the appearance and character of the unmarried young ladies of the Bai family, and which family was the most outstanding and closest to the eldest branch. After all, from ancient times until now, the fastest and best way to strengthen a relationship was through marriage. and this marshal did not seem like the kind of person who did not like women. However, these were all matters for the future. There was plenty of time to strengthen their relationship, and the most important thing right now was to resolve the current crisis. Therefore, he discussed with Sun Lang for a while and decided on strategy. Right now, we have only received a tip. Since the other party came for the Huichuan murder case, they must have a formal statement. After all, my father is the gold radiant sword sage, and the Bai family is the descendant of a sword sage. They can't just come to our door rashly. No matter what, they have to send a letter. Besides, they also need time to gather people. Bai Junming continued. Thus, the situation is still unclear. That Emperor hasn't made any moves on the surface either. Marshal, you could just sit back and watch. With your noble status, the Bai family will be able to handle some small matters without the Marshal's help. However, if the Bai family meets with an unsolvable problem, the Marshal will have to show mercy. At least this old fellow is sensible and knows his limits. If he had directly asked me to go out and do those small things without saying anything, I would have slapped you to death and thrown your wooden blocks. I'm not a general of the volunteer army. Sun Lang nodded, secretly praising this young man for his tact. Then he asked, what do you plan to do? Bai Junming organized his words and said, the other party is gathering people and planning something. We can't just sit still and wait. They're not only gathering people to denounce the Bai family, but they are also spreading rumors. Therefore, we have to fight back. Even if they come to denounce us, the Bai family is not made of paper. Moreover, we have the Marshal with us. Even if the other party has a lot of masters, it is nothing. As for the public opinion, he thought carefully and seemed to have made a decision. He bowed and said, I have a plan, and I hope the Marshal can approve it. Sun Lang said indifferently, tell me about it. Bai Junming's voice was cold as ice. Even though it was an unintentional act to kill someone in a fit of madness, it was a fact that he had done it. He had given the emperor a huge piece of evidence that could be used against him. If the imperial court wants to use this as a pretext to make a fuss, the Bai clan will definitely be forced into a passive position. I think that since we can't avoid it, we should take the initiative and write a letter to the emperor before the imperial court asks about it. Sun Lang's expression changed. What do you want to say? Bai Junming said softly, of course, I want to defend myself. I want to say that my father was severely injured in the battle at the Great Barren Mountain and has been bedridden for the past 2 years. I want to say that he has never left the Bai family castle. I want to say that he has fought for the country all his life and only wants to enjoy his old age. I don't want to make a comeback, and I don't want to claim credit for myself. Who would have thought that a vicious scoundrel would frame my father and humiliate him? Sun Lang waved his hand and said, that's a good idea. First, you want to make a fuss and insist that this is a false accusation. At the same time, you can mention your father's achievements. However, if you make your father sound too pitiful, saying that he is bedridden and can't make a decision, what if the emperor sends an imperial envoy to investigate this matter and say that since your father is dying, you should hand over the sacred golden elemental sword? Can you give it to him? Do you dare to hand it over? Bai Junming was stunned. That was true. He only wanted to get through this crisis, but Sun Lang only wanted to see the sacred golden elemental sword. The two sides had different standpoints, so they looked at things from different angles. Therefore, he asked, then in your opinion? Sun Lang waved his hand and said, make a big fuss, but don't make your father sound too pitiful. Say that your father is angry, or sad, but don't say that he is dying. At the same time, make use of your father's old friends. The favors your father left behind should be used. First, you have to report this to the imperial court and make a decision. Bai Junming thought for a while and said, I understand. Sun Lang nodded and said, then you go and make the arrangements. Since Sichuan is your family's territory, you will be more familiar with some things than I am. I want you to pay close attention to everything, especially. He looked at Bai Junming and said lightly, pay attention to Tensei province. Don't let go of any clues related to Tensei province. Bai Junming was startled and immediately said, yes, then you go first. As for me, Sun Lang showed a slightly distressed expression I have to go back and see a patient with Alzheimer's disease. After Bai Jinming said goodbye, Sun Lang returned to the ruins and saw Xie Wei squatting there, talking and laughing with Bai Yue. He could hear the little minx's cheerful voice and also see the silly smile on Bai Yue's face. Obviously, the two had established a preliminary friendship. The little minx and the old man got along well. Bai Yue immediately saw his son and shouted, "Son, son, I didn't move at all." Xie Wei was startled and hurriedly turned around. After seeing Sun Lang, she showed a somewhat unnatural expression. After all, she was just a simple little girl and couldn't hide things in her heart. Sun Lang smiled at her. "You get along well with him. I didn't see that you have the potential to be a nursing home nurse." The little minx snorted. "You are too rude. Mr. Bai is a good person. He is very obedient and good to people. As long as you communicate with him calmly, you will naturally receive a good response. I used to get along with my teachers. Their temper is similar. They just want to find someone to talk to. As long as you listen to them quietly, they will be very happy." Sun Lang said, "Oh, then you are very good." Xie Wei curled her lips. She didn't know how to answer. Sun Lang didn't want to talk to her anymore. He sat directly on the side and looked at Bai Yue. "Hey, old man Bai." Bai Yue stared at him and showed a slightly flattering smile. "Son, what's the matter?" Sun Lang sighed. "Do you want to be my father so much?" Bai Yue shouted, "I am your father, son." Sun Lang pinched the space between his eyebrows. "Since you are my father, then I will give you something. Will you give it to me?" Bai Yue nodded wildly. Here, whatever you want. I will give it to you. I will bring it all for you." Sun Lang said directly, "Sword. I want a sword in this shape, this appearance." He drew the shape of the golden obsidian sacred sword on the ground again and added, "This thing is yours. Take it out and give it to me. If it is my father, he will not be stingy with this thing. Right? You said you are my father, then prove it to me." Old Man Bai looked at the shape on the ground and showed a confused look, murmuring, "This sword. I'm very familiar with it. I seem to have seen it somewhere before." Ji Du floated to Sun Lang's side and said lightly, "When he fought with you before, he remembered his martial arts memory. Now that his memory is loose, he may remember something again." Although he said so, he still concealed the fact that Bai Yue had just recognized the horn of the horned tiger. Xie Wei heard this, and her expression tightened. She quietly clenched her right hand. She wanted to desperately ask Sun Lang loudly. Although she didn't know the specific truth from the conversation between Sun Lang and Bai Yue in the past 2 days, as well as Sister Lu's occasional disclosure, Sun Lang was also in a high position in the Tianyuan army. Maybe he knows my parents. Oh, if he knew my parents, why would he kill my brother so mercilessly? Moreover, how can I ask him about my parents? He will definitely be suspicious, Xie Wei reluctantly convinced herself. She thought of Empress Tensei. That person also exposed her identity and seemed to know a lot of things. Maybe she could ask her. The only thing she didn't want to ask was Sun Lang. She didn't know why. Perhaps it was the instinctive vigilance against the enemy who killed her brother, or perhaps it was the sharp intuition given by the unique spiritual ability of the horned tiger. Deep in her heart, she faintly felt that this matter couldn't be revealed to Sun Lang. Otherwise, there might be something very terrible that would happen. Suddenly, a loud shout broke her train of thought. I think I remember now." Chapter 632. Sun Lang said indifferently, "What did you think of?" Old Bai raised his head with great effort, looked at Sun Lang, and said with difficulty, the sword eats people." Sun Lang was stunned. "What?" Bai Yue lowered his head again, looked at the picture drawn by Sun Lang, and shuddered, revealing a frightened expression. He stammered, the sword eats people. It's a bad thing. I can't take it. I can't give it to you." Sun Lang frowned and asked, "Eats people? How does it eat people?" Old Bai's expression became deranged again, and he mumbled, "Eats people? How else can it eat people? It just eats like that, eats a lot of people, swallows your soul, devours your spirit, and traps you in the sword." Before he finished speaking, Sun Lang's expression changed greatly, and he suddenly grabbed Bai Yue's head and with a rumble pulled him out of the ground. He looked at Bai Yue, and his eyes revealed a fierce light. "What did you say?" Bai Yue looked at him and suddenly revealed a strange smile. "It eats people like that. You should know. You seem to be like me. You seem to have been eaten before." Sun Lang's eyes suddenly became malicious. The little fairy, who had been baffled, suddenly shuddered and retreated in fear. The Jidu sword in her hand bloomed with a purple light, and the demonic power that surged up temporarily calmed her mind. But Xie Wei's face still became pale. She looked at Sun Lang in fear, and the sharp spiritual power of the horned tiger instantly felt an indescribable blazing killing intent. Such a dense killing intent filled with the smell of blood, she did not even dare to think that such a degree of killing intent could exist in this world. Jidu's monster light shone brightly, and the sword spirit's voice appeared in the air through the resonance of the monster power. She shouted, "Sun Lang." This shout was filled with Jidu's surging demonic power, which was comparable to the 7 luminaries' sacred sword. When it was used in the sound waves, it already possessed a soul-stirring spiritual power. Although this level of impact was nothing to Sun Lang, it was enough to arouse his attention and awaken his rationality. His eyes cleared as he forcibly broke free from the memories of the past. However, when he looked at Bai Yue, his eyes were still filled with coldness and mockery. "You said that you were also eaten? Looks like a great hero, like you will have the same ending." However, neither the B*TCH nor Sun Lang expected that the shout that contained demonic power would not only wake up Sun Lang, who was immersed in his nightmare, but it also awakened Bai Yue's obsession with this name deep in his memory. There was a moment of confusion in Bai Yue's eyes, and then he muttered to himself, "Sun Lang." He looked at the person in front of him, his expression becoming more and more confused. He whispered, I seem to remember this name. I also remember your face. I remember you said to me." Sun Lang's eyes were as calm as an ancient well, quietly looking at the confused old man in front of him. Bai Yue shook his head and said in a low voice, "You told me that you were called Sun Lang. You had no expression. You were like a dead person. You told me that you were called Sun Lang." The old general's body was trembling. His eyes slowly became bloodshot, as if his soul was trembling, his hands involuntarily trembling. He broke free from Sun Lang's grip and took 2 steps back, using his hands to hold his head. Trembling under the cover of his messy hair, he stared at Sun Lang with a pair of terrifying eyes and hissed, "I still remember. You were counting. You had no expression. You were like a dead person. Then you were counting. You were counting 161,956, 161,957, 161,958. I told you to stop. Why didn't you stop? I kowtowed to you. Why did you still count? I called your name. Why didn't you turn around?" Bai Yue's 10 fingers were like hooks, forcefully clasping his head. Big drops of tears unconsciously fell from his eyes. His tone slowly became crazy. "When did this happen? Why did I remember it? Why do I feel inexplicable grief? Why are you counting? What do these numbers mean? What are you counting? What are you counting?" He roared out the last sentence. Bai Yue's hair and beard fluttered wildly. His eyes were completely red. Like a malicious spirit, he pounced at Sun Lang. The blazing white brilliance wildly rose from his body, sharp and awe-inspiring. The invisible sword light angrily shot towards Sun Lang, and the sound of the sword resounded through the sky. The power belonging to the Golden Glory Holy Sword did not appear in a passive defense, but actively erupted this time. "Quickly retreat," Jidu shouted through the spiritual link. "Bai Yue is crazy again." Under the protection of Jidu's demon power, Xie Wei retreated far away, her eyes full of shock. She did not know what Bai Yue was talking about. She was just an outsider. Based on the fragmentary words of the 2 people, she was far from being able to piece together the truth that was enough to shake the world. However, she still felt the unforgettable sadness and despair from Bai Yue's words. She recalled the legends and stories about the gold radiant sword saint, Bai Yue. He was an elder of 3 dynasties, a famous general, and a great hero of the Heaven's Origin sector. He was one of the few Grandmaster Sword Saints in the world, and also a famous general in the martial temple. What kind of blow could make such a rare hero go crazy and abandon his past? The little demon's eyes turned to the expressionless Sun Lang. There is no doubt that Bai Yue's fall to this point was absolutely related to Sun Lang. So what did he do? The demon sword his hand vibrated and Ji Du's voice came out. The sword spirit shouted, "Sun Lang, do you want to help?" Sun Lang's calm and almost indifferent voice came steadily from the gale that was blazing like blades and swords. "There's no need. He's the one who brought about his own death by attacking with sword chi." The sword spirit was stunned at first, and then suddenly understood. Yes, if Bai Yue relied on his invulnerability in close combat, Sun Lang could not do anything to him. But if they used sword chi to attack, the result was clear at a glance. The blazing white sword light had long been blocked by a tit-for-tat force. A force that was comparable to the power of the Golden Glory blocked the sharp sword chi. The two terrifying forces were silent and did not cause any turbulence or aftershocks. Sun Lang and Bai Yue looked at each other. On the body of the Golden Glory, holy sword, a sharp white brilliant sword. This brilliance was composed of countless sword lights, and each sword light was the blood chi of the battlefield. It was the original power of the Golden Glory holy sword. Countless Golden Glory sword chi gathered together, like thousands of invisible swords shooting together, enough to turn everything in front of them into ashes. But these invisible swords stopped 3 feet in front of Sun Lang and disappeared without a trace like spring snow. In Sun Lang's surroundings were calm. There was no gorgeous sword light, no overbearing momentum, nothing. It was as if all the power in his body was used to block the attack of the Golden Glory sword chi, and there was not a trace of spare energy to create any gorgeous sound or light effects. Or he had accurately calculated the energy and power of the Golden Glory sword chi, and then used just the right amount of power to offset and defend, not a bit more. Not a bit less. It was as if nothing had happened. However, even if the sword light on Bai Yue's body became more and more blazing, and the white Golden Glory sword chi surged and blazed, he could not take another step forward. Sun Lang looked at Bai Yue, who was not far away. This crazy old man still had not recovered his memories. His eyes were full of instinctive hatred, and he was driving his actions with the remaining hatred. But he vaguely felt that soon this stupid old man was recovering his memories. He was picking up the miserable and desperate memories and savoring the feelings back then. The loyal subordinate of Bai Yue, whose War of the Heavens origin was not over yet. In the past 2 years, even if his mind was in a mess, even if his soul was crazy, he had been waiting for the last sword attack. Sun Lang suddenly laughed. He raised 3 fingers at Bai Yue, who was not far away, and said, 3 things. He said, "You asked me what I was counting. I was counting how many people I killed. I counted all the way to 162,378. I will remember this number for the rest of my life." He bent his ring finger. Bai Yue was at a loss at first. Then, his eyes became more and more ferocious. Sun Lang said calmly, "The second thing is that I haven't finished counting. Just like your War of the Heavens origin is not over yet, I still have 162,379 people to count. I just promised your son that I would consider sparing your life, but just now you thought of the past, and I also thought of the past. I'm afraid you don't know that you didn't die back then, because I intentionally spared your life so that you would suffer this torture forever." Bai Yue was still mumbling. He still could not understand, but he had a soul. But the memories were engraved in his bones. Even though they were sealed in the depths of his soul, they were still tormenting his soul. Sun Lang sighed. "Maybe it's time to end it. I've seen a new light. You should close your eyes, too. Uncle Bai, the War of the Heavens origin will end eventually. I will find a way to recover your memories and finish the battle that I couldn't finish back then. Then, I will send you on your way in a fair and square way." It was a pity that the kind-hearted old man in his memory could not understand what he was talking about anymore. It did not matter. He would understand it sooner or later. Sun Lang's face gradually became gentle. Then one last thing. He bent his index finger. The remaining middle finger stood in the wild wind stubbornly, proudly, and unyieldingly, pointing at the sky at Bai Yue. 2 7 luminaries, sword saints, and 2 generals of the heavens' origin. Bai Yue's hair and beard were all fluttering. Countless streams of gold luminaries' sword auras condensed into a white pillar of light, bashing at Sun Lang's defense incessantly. Sun Lang, on the other hand, was as calm as a lake. His left hand was behind his back, and his right middle finger was raised high. He looked calm and casual. The light of the gold luminaries' sword saint vanished 3 feet away from him. His face suddenly became vivid, and he put on an unprecedented, hideous grin. Taking a deep breath, he said, "One last thing, old Bai." His voice resounded in the air clearly and loudly. "Didn't Akira Toriyama tell you?" Sun Lang roared. "Never fight against anyone with the surname of Sun." Chapter 633. When Sun Lang roared that sentence, Xia Wei was still a loss. She asked the sword spirit, "Sister Lu, who is Toriyama Akira? Is he a hero of Tianyuan?" The bitchy personality casually said, "I have never heard of this person. It is obviously someone from his hometown. This guy always says things that others don't understand." Hometown? Xia Wei still wanted to ask more, but then she saw an incomprehensible scene. The white light was breaking. The light beam, composed of thousands of golden sword chi, was constantly collapsing and disappearing into nothingness. The fierce sword chi that flourished from Bai Yue's body was constantly retreating. No, this white light was not so much breaking, but rather being swallowed. It was as if it was being swallowed by 2 spiraling dragons, as if it was being worn down by the constantly rotating yin and yang fish. The invisible force was annihilating Bai Yue's golden power. Xia Wei watched for a while. Jidu's demon power had improved her spirit sense and perception. The little fairy suddenly said, "Spiral. This is a spiral of 2 forces." The sword spirit was surprised at first, then smiled and said, "Sun Lang's control of power has reached the peak. The sword chi that he sends out is flawless and perfect. Because it intertwines with Bai Yue's golden power, it is invisible and colorless, silent and silent. You made a lot of progress. You can actually see the essence of that power." Xia Wei looked at the changes in the battle situation with some worry in her eyes. She casually said, "But I can't see which 2 forces." The sword spirit was silent for a moment, then said, "It is the power of 2 sacred swords." Sure enough, Sun Lang really has the power of 2 sacred swords. No wonder Bai Yue sometimes calls him father and sometimes calls him son when he is crazy. The 5 elements engender each other, and the 7 luminary sacred swords are intrinsically attracted to each other. It is no wonder, but why does he have such? Sister Lu spoke without rhyme or reason, and Xia Wei was confused. She wondered, "Sister Lu, what are you talking about? Children don't need to know these things." The sword spirit said coldly, "The outcome has been decided." No, the outcome has been decided since the beginning. If Bai Yue uses his invulnerable body to fight, Sun Lang may not be able to do anything to him. However, if he uses the sword chi of the origin, I'm afraid that even 5 Bai Yue combined won't be a match for Sun Lang. 5? Xia Wei said in disbelief. 5 7 luminaries, sword saints combined, couldn't beat Sun Lang? How is this possible? The sword spirit said indifferently, "What's impossible?" Before he could finish his sentence, the outcome of the battle had already been decided. Bai Yue let out an indignant roar. The unstoppable spiral had already broken through the gold radiant sword chi and was about to hit him. Blazing white sword light surged out as he tried his best to resist, but that was an enemy he could not stop. The outcome of the battle had already been decided 2 years ago. The power of the 2 sacred swords intertwined in a spiral and crushed the resistance of the gold radiance sword like a millstone. Even though Bai Yue's divine power was astonishing. He was still sent flying by the terrifying spiral force. The sword chi intertwined, and the airwaves exploded. Under this terrifying impact, Bai Yue spat out a mouthful of blood and was thrown into the sky like a rag doll. He then fell to the ground and immediately fainted. Sun Lang raised his hand, and the chaotic storm and airwaves immediately disappeared without a trace. He looked at the unconscious Bai Yue and sneered. As expected, once the gold radiant sword chi was used, his copper skin and iron bones defense decreased accordingly. He is no longer invulnerable and flawless. In other words, he walked forward and kicked Bai Yue's body. He felt the reaction force on the tip of his foot and said slowly, "His iron skin is indeed related to the gold radiant sword." Xia Wei timidly walked closer. Sun Lang turned his head and looked at her. The little fairy let out a low cry and hurriedly took 2 steps back to avoid Sun Lang's eyes. She said in a trembling voice, Can you not look at me like that?" Sun Lang was stunned for a moment. He then closed his eyes and took a few breaths. He then opened them. "It's okay." The little fairy stole a glance and finally heaved a sigh of relief. You're better like this. Although you're a little bad, you're not scary." Sun Lang looked at her. "Your spiritual power seems to be very sharp. Is it from your bloodline?" Xia Wei heard this and panicked. She laughed dryly. It seems that I'm a little special. After all, I'm a girl from the countryside. I haven't seen the world." Sun Lang had a lot of things on his mind. He didn't care about the little fairy's strange behavior. He lowered his head and looked at the unconscious Bai Yue. He said coldly, "A loyal and famous general of a generation has fallen to such a state. Heroes really don't have a good death." His tone was complicated, as if there were endless things on his mind. It seemed that the battle with Bai Yue had evoked old memories. There was a trace of melancholy in his words, which made the little fairy feel a little lonely. But Xia Wei suddenly thought of her parents. She said softly, "Heroes, if they died on the Tianyuan battlefield in a battle with the sky demon, such heroes would die a great death." Sun Lang was silent. He then looked at her and revealed a smile that the little fairy couldn't understand. It was a smile that was mixed with ridicule and sadness. He said, "That's not necessarily true, little girl." Xia Wei's heart skipped a beat. She asked, "What do you mean?" Sun Lang waved his hand and kicked Bai Yue again. The unconscious man was like a dead pig. He didn't move at all. Xia Wei didn't have time to ask. She said angrily, "Hey, you have a grudge against him. It's fine to kill him when he's awake. But he's unconscious now. What's the point of kicking him?" Sun Lang ignored her. He shook the tip of his foot and felt the reaction force this time and the change from the previous time. The sword spirit said, "What did you find?" Sun Lang said indifferently, "When the sword chi attacked just now, the gold sword chi in his body was greatly consumed. His body's strength also decreased. Now that the fight has stopped, the sword chi in his body was replenished. The decreased strength of his body also increased. This means that the newly gathered sword chi is automatically strengthening his body. This means that Bai Yue's copper skin and iron bones has a mechanism of operation." Xia Wei made an ah sound. Only then did she know that Sun Lang was doing something serious. But he didn't have to kick him directly. Sun Lang seemed to see through her thoughts. He said indifferently, "It's quite interesting to kick him a few times." "You." Xia Wei snorted and walked to the side angrily. "I'm not talking to you anymore." But the tone of the B*TCH was a little uneasy. "Do you know something about Bai Yue and the Gold Glory Holy Sword?" Sun Lang didn't answer. He just looked at Ji Du calmly. This sword spirit, which was transformed from Lu Shujian's other personality, was very shrewd and unpredictable. She originally dreamed of being Lu Shujian and getting her body back. But now she was forced to stay in the cold sword and become a sword spirit. If she knew that the Emperor was planning to transform her soul, what would she do? Especially if the other party helped her to get her body as a bargaining chip to lure her to join. After all, this technology also meant that the B*TCH still had a chance to regain her body. The sword spirit seemed to have noticed the scrutiny and suspicion in Sun Lang's eyes. He said coldly, "What are you looking at again?" Sun Lang retracted his gaze and said indifferently, I naturally know some information. I'm just considering whether to tell you or not. The B asterisk TCH said angrily, You? Sun Lang said calmly, What about me? If my memory is not wrong, you should still have a lot of hatred for me. Do you intend to turn from an enemy to a friend? The sword spirit was silent and then flew into a rage. Turn from an enemy to a friend your head. Bastard. Idiot. Bastard. Sooner or later, I will chop you into minced meat. Sun Lang thought for a moment and said slowly, Let me ask you, do you want to be a human again? The B asterisk TCH was startled and then gritted his teeth. It's too late. The sword spirit ritual can only be completed when Ji-do is born. A few months have already passed, and my soul has already become one with the demon sword. It can't be salvaged. Even if that woman appears in front of me, I won't be able to get my body back. Sun Lang wanted to say that he deserved it, but he looked at Xie Wei and his heart moved. He said indifferently, You only need to answer me. Do you want to or not? The sword spirit was silent again. She also saw Sun Lang's eyes. This man, although he didn't understand romance, he would occasionally show a considerate side. For example, he hid the things she had done in front of Xie Wei. Otherwise, if that serious little demoness knew that her sister Lu had done those things in order to forge the demon sword, with her personality, she would definitely be very sad. So she said slowly, I want to. How can I not want to? I used to be a human who wants to stay in the cold sword and slowly forget the temperature of the world. Sun Lang looked at Xie Wei and said, Then what do you mean? You are the sword master of Ji-do if your sister Lu is separated from the demon sword. Maybe this sword will be wasted. If I remember correctly, you said before that you still want to take revenge? Without Ji-do, this big golden finger, you might not be able to take revenge. Xie Wei looked at Sun Lang indifferently. With Sister Lu, it seems that I can't take revenge, she sighed softly. If Sister Lu can become a human again, I will naturally be happy for her. After all, Ji-do is her. She can decide for herself. As for me, it doesn't matter. The sword spirit said indifferently, as expected. She is such a silly girl. It would be strange if she didn't want to let go. Sun Lang nodded. Well, little demoness, let me ask you again. If I say that I have a way to let your sister Lu regain her body, the premise is that you have to promise me one thing. Can you do it? Xie Wei's expression changed slightly. She looked at Sun Lang in a panic and said with difficulty, What is it? Sun Lang misunderstood her expression and said, It seems that you have already guessed it. Maybe this matter will make things difficult for you. But the little demoness' eyes changed. She clenched her fists, gritted her teeth, and said slowly, if you can really let Sister Lu become a human again, then I won't take revenge. Huh? Chapter 634. Xie Wei had just said such words on a whim. For a moment, her heart was extremely complicated. She was a little sad, but also a little relieved. She didn't know why she was relieved. Maybe it was because she didn't have to take revenge on this guy who was too strong to be touched. So, she was relieved? It didn't seem so. She didn't know what was going on. She was sad about her brother's death, but she didn't have any memories of her brother. She didn't know what kind of person her brother was, and she didn't know if he still remembered her. She didn't know if her brother was good or evil, good or bad. She didn't know. Just based on the blood relationship and the identity of a relative, she was heartbroken and wanted to take revenge for her brother regardless of anything. Sure enough, it felt a little strange. But this didn't seem to be the reason why she decided to give up revenge. It wasn't all because of Sister Lu. Sister Lu definitely wanted to become a human again. If she could let this sword spirit with a sharp tongue but a soft heart regain her body, then Xie Wei was willing to do her best. But this didn't mean that she could take a step back from the hatred of her family. These were two different things. But why did she involuntarily say it? Xie Wei's mind was in a mess. The little minx was worrying about gains and losses. Suddenly, she heard a surprised voice. Huh? The little minx was startled. She raised her head and looked at Sun Lang. She asked in a panic, What's wrong? Sun Lang glared at her and said, Whether you give up revenge or not, it's none of my business. Do you think I'm the kind of Virgin Mary who doesn't care about herself and only cares about others? Do you think I'm the kind of Virgin Mary who works hard to persuade you to give up revenge? How is it none of your business? Xia Wei's eyes widened. She looked at Sun Lang angrily and almost jumped up. What does this person mean? Does he mean that it doesn't matter if he wants me to take revenge? Don't look down on people. But looking at Sun Lang's inexplicable expression, the little minx came back to her senses. He doesn't seem to know that it's me. He doesn't know that I'm a horned tiger. Stupid girl, be careful not to expose yourself. The voice of the B***TCH rang in her heart. Although she remained calm, Xia Wei could clearly feel a trace of warmth coming from the sword. The sword spirit said lightly, Sun Lang still doesn't know that the horned tiger he killed is your brother. Why do you always think that he already knows? Xia Wei blushed and said, it's all his fault. He acted as if everything was under his control. I thought he had seen through it long ago. The sword spirit said bluntly, are you stupid? If he knew about this, would he still talk to you so nicely? Xia Wei hesitated for a moment before whispering, is it really possible? Anyway, he always looks like he doesn't put anyone in his eyes. Even if he knows that I'm his enemy, his attitude won't change. The B***TCH was about to ridicule her when she suddenly fell silent. She seemed to have thought of something. Perhaps it was the conversation between Sun Lang and Bai Yue. She sighed and said, maybe it's really like this. This headstrong and self-opinionated guy never considers the feelings of others. You treat him as an irreconcilable enemy. Maybe he just treats you as a fool and doesn't even bother to pay attention to you. The two were communicating through their minds when Sun Lang suddenly interrupted their conversation. Hey, are you two done with your private chat? The little minx suddenly woke up. What's wrong? Sun Lang's lips twitched as he patiently said, all right, I won't keep you in suspense, lest you make wild guesses. Little Demonis, let me ask you, I have a way to let your sister Lu regain a living body. In exchange, I want you to give up your identity as the sword master of Kidu and hand the demon sword to me. Are you willing to agree? Xia Wei said without hesitation, this is elder sister Lu's matter. If she agrees, I naturally have no problem. Sun Lang looked at her in surprise. His eyes were full of praise as he nodded. You don't make decisions for others. Good child. So I'll buy, what do you think? The sword spirit was silent for a while before speaking. She seemed to be moved. If Xia Wei had said that he was willing without hesitation, she would have felt warm in her heart, but she would also have been a little dissatisfied. Why did he decide for her? Did he really think that he was her master? Did he really think that he could give Ji-Du to whoever he wanted? But Xia Wei said that everything was up to her. In this feeling, in addition to kindness, there was also respect. This respect was exactly what she wanted the most in her life. So she slowly said, no, there is no reason to kick away the sword master that I have decided on. Sun Lang, you rejected me once before. Now you want to eat grass again? No way. Xia Wei said anxiously. Elder sister Lu. The B***TCH personality snorted. Don't be silly. Sun Lang is full of nonsense. Maybe he's just bluffing. Who knows how many people he has tricked in his life. Don't be fooled by him and lose your sword. The little minx's face turned red and she stammered, What do you mean lose my life? Elder sister Lu, don't talk nonsense. The sword spirit said loudly. In short, little minx, you are the sword master that I have chosen myself. You have also promised me. That is to say, before I get tired of you, you can't run away. Xia Wei was startled when she heard this, and then her eyes softened. Elder sister Lu is very good to me, just like my own sister. I naturally don't want to leave elder sister Lu. So disgusting. Who wants to be your sister? Sun Lang listened to this dialogue that was getting more and more wrong. A meaningful look appeared on his face. He cupped his hands like a trumpet and shouted. Xia Wei naturally didn't know the meaning of this tone, but the bitch personality understood. She coldly said, dirty. Sun Lang rubbed his chin as he glanced at Xia Wei, who was young and had an exquisite figure, and then at the body of the demon sword of K2. He chuckled and said, Hey, haven't any of you done anything strange occasionally without realizing it? Ah, bitch, I just found that your sword hilt, whether it's the size, shape, or pattern, is a bit perfect. The sword spirit said coldly, What? Are you tempted? Do you want to give it a try? Although it's a bit disgusting, if it's you, I can condescend to open the door for you. When these two guys were shameless, it was really earth-shattering in bloody wind and yellow rain. But now there was only one audience, Siawei. This little minx grew up in the deep mountains and received the brainwashing education of the demon race. This kind of education model was more upright than the 9 years of compulsory education. Naturally, it cultivated a pure and flawless good child, so Siawei's understanding of the matters between men and women was extremely biased. Although she had a vague understanding of that kind of thing by virtue of her young girl's instinct, she knew that it was a very shameful thing, but when it came to the specific operation, she didn't know at all. Alas, what a pitiful little girl. Speaking of which, the 9 years of compulsory education also gave you an extracurricular reading book called Adolescent Education, so that you can look for it with a nervous and exciting mood. So she was a little confused. What are you talking about? After being asked by her, Sun Lang remembered that there was a serious matter at hand. He pondered for a moment and said to Ji Du, Gao, do you really not want to be a human anymore? The sword spirit was silent again. This question made her have no time to care about the change in the way Sun Lang addressed her. She just didn't want to be separated from Xie Wei and didn't want to fall into the hands of Sun Lang. After all, she had taken the initiative to throw herself at him but was rejected, so she had a great obsession with this matter. Moreover, her impression of Sun Lang was extremely complicated, and some things were difficult for her to accept. It was just being a human. She was now in the cold sword, sitting on Ji Du's demon power, which was comparable to the 7 luminaries' sacred sword. It was the top magic weapon in the world, but after all, she was once a human. Now that she had become a sword spirit, she could no longer feel the coolness of the wind, taste the delicious food, feel sleepy, and feel her heartbeat. Those seemingly troublesome emotions, perceptions, and feelings had now become an unreachable luxury. If there was a chance, as soon as this thought appeared, it turned into a raging flame, illuminating her whole soul. The sword spirit said slowly, If there is such a chance, I can't refuse, Sun Lang said lightly. Then, before he could continue, the B*TCH interrupted, But I only have one sword master, so don't have any ideas about me. I will always be with her. Sun Lang nodded and said to the little demoness, So, are you willing to work hard for your sister Lu and find a way to make her a human again? The little demoness agreed, even more readily this time. After all, this was her own business. Of course, Sister Lu is good to me, so I naturally have to be good to her. The B*TCH sighed. Stupid girl, are you going to board his pirate ship? Xia Wei was stunned. Wait a minute, doesn't this mean that after this matter is over, she will continue to travel with Sun Lang? This, however, Sun Lang didn't elaborate. He just waved his hand and said, Well, since we have reached a preliminary consensus, then this matter can be put aside first. There are priorities. Let's deal with the matter of Old Man Bai first. The sword spirit was stunned at first, then said, Hey, I asked you before about Bai Yue and the Golden Glory Holy Sword. Sun Lang laughed. I'm actually not too sure because there is something I haven't figured out yet. I'll tell you in detail later, the B*TCH angrily said. Then what do you mean by what you said just now? Sun Lang just smiled, then reached out and picked up the unconscious Bai Yue. He looked around and walked to the courtyard where he had plotted with Bai Zhenming before. Follow me. The B*TCH's dissatisfied complaints came from behind, as well as Xie Wei's soft, comforting voice. The demon and the sword couldn't see Sun Lang's expression. Since the B*TCH was concerned about the little demon, she naturally knew. The little demon had a proper character and looked silly, but she knew in her heart that with her by the B*TCH's side, the possibility of this B*TCH seeking refuge with the Emperor was not too high. After all, who was good and who was bad, who was right and who was wrong, who ate people without spitting out the bones. Even if the little demon didn't know, the bustch would definitely know in her heart. Therefore, for the time being, he would trust her. After all, there were only a few first-level 7 luminaries Imperial army. It would be a pity if one was destroyed now just to prepare for a rainy day. Moreover, he also had to consider Aunt Lou's feelings. Although the b'Tch had fallen to this point today, she deserved it. Losing her feelings as a human and becoming a cold sword spirit was the biggest punishment for her. However, although Master Lu didn't say it out loud, deep in her heart, she probably still felt guilty and brooded about this matter. Unless it was necessary, it was better not to kill her. Thinking like this, he looked down at Bai Yue, who was being carried away by him. The other's head was hanging down, and his white hair was messy. He was still in a coma and was at the mercy of others. Uncle Bai, I have become a very suspicious person. I can even kill people because of my suspicions. If I were to return to those years, I'm afraid the situation in Hoda Earth would be very different. Should you be happy or sad that I become like this? I can't wait to see you again. Xie Wei's voice came from behind. Can you be gentler? Old Mr. Bai's head is on the ground. It's better for you to drag him than to do this. Hey, where are you taking him? Sun Lang smiled. I don't know which personality will appear the next time he wakes up, so to be on the safe side, of course I have to find a place to lock him up first. Chapter 635. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had already passed. Sun Lang and Xie Wei had already stayed at Bai Clan Fort for 2 full days, enjoying the decadent lifestyle of a feudal lord. Bai Clan Fort was indeed the de facto king of Sichuan, the #1 aristocratic family in the entire Qinzhou. Their wealth, extravagance, and etiquette shocked Xie Wei, this country bumpkin, and Sun Lang, this quasi-country bumpkin. After all, Sun Lang's significance to the Bai clan was truly too great. If he was unhappy, he could wipe out the entire Bai clan fort with a flip of his hand. If he was happy, he could rescue the Bai clan from its current crisis with a stretch of his hand. The Bai clan had always been loyal to him, and this kind of person was even more important than the Heavenly Emperor. Bai Zhenming was a decisive and understanding person, so he would definitely treat Sun Lang as his top priority. Thus, Sun Lang enjoyed treatment that far exceeded that of an emperor. With a wave of his pen, Bai Zhenming opened up the Bai clan's treasury to the highest quality treasures and famous products, treating him even more attentively than serving old ancestor Bai Yue. Even Sun Lang couldn't help but admit, damn, it was really too satisfying. Logically speaking, he was only an ordinary person on Earth. After coming here, he had been fighting for 6 whole years. Although he later achieved outstanding merits and was promoted to the rank of marshal, that was a military camp. No matter how honorable his status was, what use was it? People died from fighting all day long. Other than killing people, he was preparing to kill people. Who had the leisure to pay attention to extravagance and pursue treatment? As for recently living off Marquis Jingon Fu soft rice and being carefully served by everyone in the Marquis Fu, it was indeed meticulous. But compared to the Bai clan's current extravagance and meticulousness, it was still a far cry. For example, Brother Bang from the end of the Qin dynasty. He was a hoodlum for 47 years before coming out to cause trouble. He only used 7 years to pacify the world and became emperor at the age of 54. But after he established the country's etiquette system and established the rules and extravagance, he sighed with emotion, I only know the nobility of an emperor today. At that time, he had already been emperor for 7 years and was a full 61 years old. And today, Sun Lang was going to let out a sigh of admiration. Today, I finally know the nobility of a marshal. Mother asterisk her, they were too particular. He finally knew how particular the so-called aristocratic families could be if they were particular about it. A large part of the heritage of the so-called ancient aristocratic families was reflected in this kind of silent attention. It was pleasing to the eye, and it was just right to serve you from head to toe. Even a simple cup of water was so particular. However, Sun Lang didn't have the fortune to enjoy the most essential part of all these things. It was really very sad. Today, Bai Jiming came to greet him again. After bowing, he asked carefully, "Marshal, are those beauties not to your liking? They were carefully selected and are all virgins. If you think that they are lowly and not qualified to serve you, then I have a few nieces, all of them." All right, all right." Sun Lang waved his hand impatiently and said with displeasure, "I say, you feudal dregs are so vulgar all day long. Why are you raising so many beautiful young ladies? They are so young and beautiful at their best. They should have a happy life and beautiful love, but they are treated as playthings by you. Shameless, really shameless. Hey, during the war, whether it was writing letters or reuniting, Father would always complain to me about you. He said that you were good in every way except that you were a little obsessed with women. It was as if you had never slept with a woman in your life. You didn't seem at all like a legitimate son from the Jia Manor, a place of luxury. You came from a wealthy family and have countless beauties, yet you still have the face to talk about me?" However, he only dared to say this in his heart. As long as Sun Lang didn't directly slash him with his sword, Bai Jiming would listen to whatever he scolded. He smiled and nodded. "Yes, Marshal is noble and upright. We are shameless and wrong. Those young ladies should have beautiful love, but my nieces don't need it. They were born with good clothes and a good life. Everything was given to them by their families, so they should repay their families. Now, they can serve Marshal. This is their blessing," Sun Lang said with a disdainful expression. "No need. Sun Lang, regard all women in the world as dung. What's the meaning of the so-called beautiful skeletons? Is it more comfortable than masturbating? Don't think about using beauty to bribe me. It's useless. You can find the golden, glorious sacred sword. It's more useful than anything else. I hate this kind of political marriage the most. In the future, don't let those women wander in front of me." Outside the window, Xia Wei heard this righteous shout and praised in a low voice. "I heard that among humans, there are sages who can sit still. Are they talking about people like Sun Lang?" The bitch burst out laughing. "Him? Sit still? You might as well hope that dogs don't eat shit." Xia Wei spat, so vulgar. But Sun Lang is really like that. These 2 days, the Bai family has been too enthusiastic. Not to mention him, even I was well served. The night before yesterday, I was almost scared to death. 8 young ladies served me while I bathed, and all of them were so beautiful. I really wasn't used to it, so I asked them to go out. I thought that Sun Lang would take the opportunity to do that kind of thing. I didn't expect that he would also drive them out. The little demoness thought of the scene that day, and it seemed that her impression of Sun Lang had become very good. After all, for a woman, if a man had an awe-inspiring attitude towards the temptation of other women, it was undoubtedly a very good bonus, even if the relationship between the two of them was not close. The sword spirit just sneered. However, for some reason, she didn't tell Xia Wei the reason why Sun Lang refused the women's charms. She was a little demoness who grew up in the mountains. When had she ever seen such a scene? The pastries she usually ate were so delicious that she almost swallowed her tongue, but she couldn't recognize any of them. These 2 days, there were people serving her all the time. This feeling of being held in the palm of their hands made the little demoness happy, but she also felt inferior. Her mood was extremely complicated. Just as she was letting her imagination run wild, she heard Bai Zhenming hesitate for a moment and ask, "Marshal, my father," the little demoness stuck out her tongue. "Your father was beaten up by Sun Lang again 2 days ago and is still unconscious. Sai, this Sun Lang is really something. He beat up someone else's father and even made someone else serve him as their father." Sun Lang said from inside, "Your father is still in prison. He still hasn't woken up, just like yesterday. He is very healthy and still maintains his invulnerable defense, but he is still unconscious. Little Ming, we can't be sure about anything else, but it's obvious that whether it's your father's madness, his body's abnormality, or even his current coma, it must be the imperial court that secretly did something." Xia Wei listened carefully and curled his lips. You also beat him up several times and directly push your own fall to the imperial court. You're too much. Bai Jinming said hatefully, my father has been loyal to the country all his life, yet the emperor actually did this kind of thing to him. It really makes one laugh coldly. If I don't give him an explanation, I'm not worthy of being called a son. Xia Wei secretly looked at Bai Jinming's expression. Hearing his tone, the little demoness's heart was slightly moved. This Mr. Bai's mood seemed to be very complicated. Sun Lang said, don't be in such a hurry to show your loyalty. If you can't get past this hurdle, your Bai family will be crippled. How will you have the chance to settle the debt with the emperor? When you came today, you had a worried expression on your face. Did something happen? Bai Jinming's expression became serious. He lowered his head and said, yes. Marshal is wise. Today, Bai Castle has already received the first visiting card. Sun Lang took the visiting card from Master Bai's hands. After looking at it a few times, he snorted and said, that baldy from Sanskrit Temple. Sanskrit Temple is known as the Mount Tai and Big Dipper of the righteous path in the martial arts world. They consider themselves the police of the martial arts world, and when they encounter something, they have to take care of it. Let me see. Oh, so it's because a few secular disciples died. They came to ask for an explanation. Bai Jinming said indifferently, try peaceful means before resorting to force. The Bai family is the family of a sword saint, and we have countless old friends in the military. These martial arts people are also very afraid of us. Sun Lang waved his hand. These people are all chickens and pottery dogs. This is your home ground, and you have the prestige of a sword saint. If they come to cause trouble, as long as you refuse to admit it, they can't do anything. The most worrying thing is whether or not the imperial court is adding fuel to the fire behind them. This is the key to your life. But Jinming nodded. Yes, this little one also thinks so. Marshal suspects that it's the Tensei province. Sun Lang smiled. There's no need to doubt it. It's 100% certain. Moreover, that noble heavenly strategies empress is most likely our biggest opponent this time. Bai Jinming was shocked. He asked, Marshal, how can you be sure that it's Empress Tensei? I heard that she's in Ming province. Sun Lang revealed his shining teeth. I was the one who brought her from Ming province to Huaichuan. Now that I've come to Qin province, she'll most likely follow anger, 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 anger. When the little demon outside heard the heavenly strategies Empress concubine, her expression changed. She recalled how the Empress concubine had exposed her race and origin. How much did the Empress concubine know about her parents inside? Bai Jinming spoke again. Marshal, to be honest, my father is currently in a coma, and this is indeed a very difficult matter. I was thinking that those people from a martial arts world came to ask for an explanation, probably because they wanted my father to confront them, so the best way would be for my father to come out and deny everything, instead of trying to cover it up. But now he is in a coma. This problem, Sun Lang rubbed his chin and thought for a moment. It's really a problem, but your father is crazy now. Even if he wakes up, he won't be able to confront those Wulin people. Instead, it'll be easy for him to give himself away and let them know that your father is crazy. A madman naturally doesn't need a motive to kill. Bai Jinming sighed. Yes, this is really. At this moment, Sun Lang suddenly smiled. I have an idea. Hey, how about I be your father? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.